Chapter 1224. I'll only use one punch. You can comprehend as much as you can. There's prosperity and decline in the world. I don't care if the Shang dynasty is destroyed or if the gods and Buddhas are rampant. I only hope that everyone in this world has the heart of a king. I hope that the prosperity of the human race will never disappear. I hope that the human race will stand tall in this world. Under the control of the mighty force, Lin Yuan slowly raised his right hand. In an instant, endless power gathered at the tip of his fist. Lin Yuan seemed to hear countless voices in the unseen world. Some were cursing, some were thanking, and some were praying. It was as if a picture scroll had appeared before his eyes. It was a battle against the heavens, the gods, and the people. He kept promoting the talents at the bottom of the hierarchy, suppressing the officials and the gods so that they could not raise their heads. He gave all the talented people a stage to display their talents. He found a better habitat for his people, hunted beasts, built houses, and developed the barren mountains and forests into prosperous cities. Xian's life was quickly displayed before Lin Yuan's eyes. In the end, the fast-forwarded image stopped at the day when the Shang dynasty's army set out to the south. Lin Yuan, who had some understanding of this period of history, knew that this was the most important battle in Xian's life. It was also the last battle he fought for his people as the king of Huaxia. At that time, the Shang dynasty was in the Little Ice Age. The so-called Little Ice Age referred to the drastic drop in global temperature, which led to the reduction of food production, migration of wild beasts, floods, droughts, hailstorms, locusts, earthquakes, windstorms, frost, and plagues. In the face of such disasters, everyone would die if they did not migrate to a warmer place. Therefore, after Xian went through a series of struggles to suppress the gods and the officials, all the feudal lords were scared witless. All of them longed for another person to sit on the throne. At the critical juncture, Xian resolutely chose to lead the army to the south just to fulfill his duty as the king of Huaxia. He wanted to find a place for his people to settle down. This battle could be said to be the peak of the military. According to some historical records, Xian's expedition to the south had expanded the Shang dynasty's territory by at least 5 times. And then, King Shang was stuffed to death. The fall of the Shang dynasty was actually similar to the fall of the Qin dynasty. Qin Shi Huang conquered the eastern barbarians, the southern barbarians, the western barbarians, and the northern barbarians. He left all the troops of the state of Qin on the battlefield to suppress the foreign tribes. Until the reign of Emperor Wu of Han, there were still troops wearing the armor of the state of Qin in Lingnan. Almost all of them were the descendants of the soldiers who suppressed the barbarians during the Qin dynasty. Other places were also suppressed by the troops of the state of Qin. Before the death of Qin Shi Huang, he even took the initiative to order these troops not to return no matter what happened in the country. If the state of Qin perished, they were allowed to be kings on the spot. As a result, after Hu Hai ascended to the throne, rebel armies rose up all over the country. Just as they were about to reach Xianyang City, Zhang Han had no choice but to form an army with his concubines and prisoners to fight them off. The destruction of Yinshang was also due to this. King Shang had expanded his territory by more than 5 times. Although he had made great military achievements, the problem he was facing now was even more severe. After all, there were countless vassals in the country who wanted to pull him down from the throne, and there were more new territories abroad waiting to be developed. Under such circumstances, King Shang's decision was to leave the elite troops in the newly conquered territories to suppress the rebels, while he only brought some injured soldiers back to Zhaoga, escorting some of the slaves he had plundered through the war. Even so, King Shang had defeated the allied vassals time and time again through his tactics and military strategy. Lin Yuan saw that the allied vassals were burdened by the slaves abandoned by King Shang. Their already stretched rations were almost depleted, and they were faced with Zhaoga, which was built like a war fortress by the successive kings of Yinshang. Not to mention that Lin Yuan had been through many wars. Even a newbie who had never eaten pork would know that the allied vassals would fail due to the lack of rations if there were no accidents. But King Shang lost. The ministers he trusted were traitors, his uncles were traitors, his brothers were traitors, his empress, and his children were all traitors. Therefore, with an absolute advantage, the gates of Zhaoga were opened by a bunch of traitors. The allied vassals, who were starving, swarmed in. They burned, killed, and plundered all the way to the palace. The scene froze again. This time, King Shang appeared in front of Lin Yuan's eyes. He was already standing on Jiaxing Tower, which was filled with rations and supplies. A huge fire soared into the sky. The wealth that Yinshang had accumulated over the years, and the resources plundered from the south were all burned in the fire. Suddenly, Lin Yuan seemed to see King Shang's soul appear on the ruined Jiaxing Tower, laughing wildly at the ashen-faced Jiang Xia and GFA. Without wealth and food, it meant that GFA's dream of conquering the world and ascending to the throne had been shattered. To appease Wu Geng, GFA even took the initiative to return Yinshang's ancestral land and the remaining people to Wu Geng. He even conferred Wu Geng, who should have been exterminated, as a feudal lord. On the other hand, Yin Hong and Yin Jiao, the traitors, were killed on the spot to vent their anger. Finally, he sat on the throne that symbolized the supremacy of the human world. He looked up and saw the vassals who were as powerful as him, or even more powerful than him. For 800 years GFA, Jigongming, Jiyan de Tong, Western Zhou, and Eastern Zhou did not improve. Instead, their territories became smaller and their lives became worse and worse. In the end, they were destroyed by Qin state. They still called themselves the Emperor of Zhou or the King of Zhou. In contrast, King Shang of Yinshang before the Zhou dynasty, and the first emperor of Qin dynasty after the Zhou dynasty. How ridiculous was it? The picture scroll in front of him was destroyed. Lin Yuan slowly stretched out his fist. It was a simple punch. From the outside, there was nothing fancy about it. However, after such a punch was thrown, the 9 cauldrons were destroyed and the mountains and rivers were turned upside down. Bo Yikao's twisted face was still full of surprise, but he could not even react. He was directly blown into nothingness by this punch. This punch is called the Human King. The low and hoarse voice sounded again. And immediately, the huge power that was controlling Lin Yuan suddenly dissipated. At this moment, Lin Yuan only felt that his heart was empty, and he even had a feeling of wanting to cry. The Human King was the most supreme existence in the world. It could be said that when the Human King was angry, the heaven and earth would collapse. However, at the same time, the Human King was the most sorrowful existence in the world. Because what he said and did was for the longevity of the human race and the world. When he worked towards this goal, his former companions would become his enemies. Even his wife and children would eventually stand on the opposite side. Looking around, he only felt that everything in the world belonged to him, but he did not seem to belong to this world. Chapter 1225. Lamentable, lamentable, pitiful yet respectable. The words alone were the most suitable to describe the Human King. No one would understand him, and no one would get close to him. Every person he saw when he opened his eyes every day was his enemy, or a potential enemy. When he was sad, he did not even have anyone to talk to. He had to keep his eyes open even when he slept. This was because the Human King always knew that when he gave an order, he would fight for the interests of countless commoners, and also infringe on the interests of countless influential officials. People would change. Especially those talents and scholars who kept saying that they would serve the country and the people. Once they were in the imperial court, what they said before would be no different from farts. Because at this time, they were no longer the poor students who had problems even eating. They were the influential officials who stood in the imperial court, and at the top of the food chain in the imperial court. They could decide the life and death of countless people with one word. If the Human King wanted to fight for the interests of the commoners, the interests of these influential officials would be reduced. Even if some things did not belong to them in the first place, it would not stop them from seizing and making the things that they fancied their own. It was really tiring and lonely to deal with these people day in and day out. The scholars who were like-minded the day before became his new opponents the moment he put on the official's robe. Everyone in the world was his enemy. However, he could never stop. This was because as the Human King, he had to promote the progress of the entire human race and make the human race stronger and stronger. Only in this way could he ensure that the main character of every era was the human race. He would not be like the 3 races after the beginning of the world, followed by the shaman and demon race after that. After that, he would directly withdraw from the stage of the world and be replaced by a new race. "This is the human king?" Lin Yuan murmured. He looked into the distance and said from the bottom of his heart, "May the human race exist with the world forever." Lin Yuan, why do you want the real spirit karma position map? Could it be? After everything was settled and he left the arena, the system appeared to communicate with Lin Yuan again. Lin Yuan let out a long breath. There was a faint smile on his face. As his eyes moved, it was like the stars were flickering. At the same time, far away in the void of space, a bronze coffin that floated in the endless sea of bitterness trembled slightly. A moment later, a loud laugh rang out from the coffin. With just this laugh, over a dozen minor worlds in the vicinity collapsed and collapsed. Countless living beings were crushed by the terrifying pressure, leaving only a wisp of Xiantian qi, which was then extracted by an invisible force. Just like the Xiantian qi of the other living beings, the Xiantian qi gathered into a milky white river and poured into the bronze coffin. The bronze coffin shook even more violently, as if the thing inside was about to break out of the coffin at any moment. At this moment, a jade-white hand extended out of nowhere and gently touched the bronze coffin. The vibration of the bronze coffin stopped abruptly. A white-robed young man with sword-like eyebrows walked out of the void and sat cross-legged on the bronze coffin. He looked in the direction of the Tianwu world and muttered, "Soon, soon. It's just that I don't know if you'll still." The voice gradually drifted away. The young man sitting on the bronze coffin had a faint smile on his face. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the sea of misery with the bronze coffin. On the other side, after obtaining the 3 live stone and the true spirit karma position map, Lin Yuan's consciousness dissipated on its own. His vision turned black and then bright, and he returned to his main body in the Tianwu world. "Io, my Lord Dragon King, you're finally awake. The allied army formed by the outer sea monsters is about to reach this palace." The crab boss appeared in front of Lin Yuan with a frown. His aura was weak, as if he had been heavily injured. Even his Demon King realm was somewhat unstable, constantly jumping between the desolate Demon realm and the Demon King realm. Lin Yuan was certain that if the crab boss didn't recuperate properly, it wouldn't take long for him to fall from the Demon King realm. He might be stuck in the desolate demon realm for the rest of his life. What's going on? Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and looked at the crab boss. Boss Crab saw that Lin Yuan's face was full of indifference. Although he was anxious at the moment, he didn't know why, but his heart gradually calmed down. It seemed that as long as the black dragon took action, all the problems would not be a problem. Half an hour ago, the endless sea had suddenly been unsealed. The outer sea monsters had suddenly attacked and caught the dragon bloodline demonic beasts off guard. The two sides had then engaged in a fierce battle. The dragon bloodline demonic beasts had suffered heavy losses. If not for the help of a few ancestral demon ancestors, the dragon bloodline demonic beasts at the front line would have been wiped out. However, although the dragon bloodline demonic beasts had stabilized the defensive line, they had also left behind millions of corpses. The originally weak defensive line had once again become weak. Many outer sea monsters took the opportunity to break through the defensive line formed by the dragon bloodline demonic beasts and massacred the nearby sea regions. One of the groups of outer sea monsters didn't even stop and headed straight for the city of trade. Fortunately, these outer sea monsters couldn't use the teleportation formation to directly attack the city of trade. Otherwise, this place would have fallen long ago. Flood Dragon 1, Taimu, Cyrus, and the other experts of the City of Trade fought against the outer sea monsters. All of them suffered heavy injuries and were forced to retreat. Taimu even had 2 of his pincers broken by an outer sea monster that looked like an octopus. Even the crab boss, a merchant, had no choice but to fight a few rounds with the enemy. However, he was still forced to retreat. Now, they were only relying on the defensive formation outside the palace to deal with the enemy. However, if this continued, it would only be a matter of time before they fell. Therefore, the crab boss appeared outside Lin Yuan's palace. He wanted to see if he could awaken Lin Yuan, and see if Lin Yuan had a solution. "Got it." Lin Yuan replied indifferently. His eyes turned slightly, and a large amount of nether realm black water was secreted from his scales. When the nether realm black water fell to the ground, it turned into various black sea monsters. Without needing Lin Yuan to call them, they directly rushed out of the palace. Lin Yuan leisurely moved his body and followed behind these nether river sea monsters. He murmured, "The god-worshipping sect is much more narrow-minded than I thought. They seized the opportunity and directly rushed to the city of trade. Do they really think I'm a pushover? The god-worshipping sect?" The crab boss, who was following behind Lin Yuan, was slightly startled. A trace of fear flashed through his round eyes. It seemed that he had never imagined that the group of outer sea monsters that had set their eyes on the city of trade was actually the god-worshipping sect that was rumored to be strong enough to compete with the Dragon Temple. Chapter 12:26. In the chaos of the endless sea, no one knew what role the god-worship sect played. But strictly speaking, since the god-worship sect was a major force in the endless sea, it was impossible for them to go with the flow. As long as one wasn't a real fool, one wouldn't believe that the god-worship sect was simply invited by the outer sea monsters to help. But later on, things changed again. Because of the greed of the mutant, he lured the heavenly court into the situation, trying to provoke a war between the heavenly court and the god-worship sect, so that he could eat the fat meat of the endless sea. Or rather, he wanted the guardian of the heavenly gate behind him to eat this fat meat. It was because of this greed that the god-worship sect and the heavenly court were still entangled, but the guardian of the heavenly gate represented by the mutant had already been kicked out of the game. The current situation was nothing more than the god-worship sect wanting to use Lin Yuan as a weapon to deal with the heavenly court, but in the end, they were defeated by Lin Yuan. Unable to swallow their anger, they turned around and cooperated with the heavenly court to attack the dragon blood monsters. After all, Lin Yuan's body was now in the endless sea, the city of trade and the foundation of the gray-scaled flood dragon people were also here. As long as the outer sea monsters could break through the defense of the dragon blood monsters, no matter what Lin Yuan thought, he would have to fight, and the god-worship sect would still be able to reap the benefits. But the god-worship sect had an untainted background after all, and knowing that the heavenly court was not to be trifled with, it was inevitable that they would have some doubts. At that time, whether or not the Church of Gods could have the last laugh would depend on how intense the battle between Lin Yuan and the heavenly court was. If both sides were in a killing frenzy, it would naturally be excellent if both sides suffered heavy losses. However, if the winner did not suffer heavy losses, then the plan of the Church of Gods could be said to be in vain. Therefore, before the heavenly court arrived in front of Lin Yuan, the god-worship sect had to make a series of emergency measures. For example, they had to force Lin Yuan into a dead end first. Just like now, Lin Yuan could conclude that at this moment, most of the demonic beasts outside the city of trade were under the command of the god-worship religion. Even if a few of them were kidnapped, they should be the original demonic beasts of the outer sea. No existence of the heavenly court participated in this assault. These bastards wanted to first destroy the city of trade and slaughter the gray-scaled flood dragon people, so that Lin Yuan would be enraged and lead the dragon bloodline demonic beasts to fight to the death with the heavenly court. This was a very simple plan, so simple that it could be seen through at a glance. However, this was also considered an open conspiracy. After all, Lin Yuan had spent a lot of time and effort in the endless sea. He absolutely couldn't accept the result of leaving with his tail between his legs. Thus, Lin Yuan would definitely fight to the end. Lin Yuan's character was like that. Even if he didn't have a good time, he wouldn't let the enemy laugh at him. So what if Lin Yuan saw through it? If he wanted to take revenge on the House of Gods, he would have to deal with the heavenly court first. Even if the heavenly court couldn't just watch the god-worship sect shrink back, the heavenly court was after all Hongjuan's subordinate. Their primary goal was to kill him, an existence related to Hongjuan's death tribulation. If the god-worship sect really shrank back, the heavenly court would still have to step in. Even the heavenly court didn't really care about the endless sea. The reason they appeared here was not because of the strange man's request, but because they were originally here to deal with Lin Yuan. At this time, the heavenly court wouldn't casually fall out with the god-worship sect, because the god-worship sect was really difficult to deal with, and Lin Yuan was just as difficult to deal with. If these two sides joined forces, even if the heavenly court didn't leave any trump cards this time, they still wouldn't have the confidence to defeat either of them. While thinking, Lin Yuan had already arrived outside the palace. The first thing he saw was the battle going on. According to the original design of the City of Trade, the main defensive target was actually the interior of the city. Although the four walls were made of willow stone, the reason why the willow stone Great Wall was able to withstand the endless flood of outer sea monsters was because of the elite dragon bloodline monster beasts guarding the Great Wall, and the fact that the Great Wall had an excellent array formation around it. If it was just a towering mountain pass, the enemy would have a way to climb over it. The City of Trade was originally not a war fortress. The four walls here were not so much for military purposes, but for a variety of expensive equipment that could be used in the depths of the endless sea. After all, who could expect the enemy to face a city with a transmission formation inside, and still attack the city from the outside? Such an enemy probably didn't exist. If it did, there were only three possibilities. The first was that the enemy was so stupid that they didn't know what was good for them, and insisted on using their own bodies to test which of the willow stone walls was harder. The second was that they were quite confident in their own strength, and didn't need to resort to trickery, and could just crush the enemy head-on. Of course, there was also the last special case, which was that their relationship with the people in the endless sea was really too bad. Even if they wanted to take advantage of the situation, they couldn't enter the City of Trade through the transmission formation. Under the name of the Outer Sea Monster Beasts, the god worship sect, which had temporarily organized the monster beasts, might have met all three of the conditions. Lin Yuan's gaze swept across the small battlefields, and he had a general understanding of the level of these outer sea monster beasts. The City of Trade had set up many residential areas to house the gray-scaled flood dragon people. In other words, rather than calling them residential areas, it was better to call them small strongholds that resembled military stations. All kinds of mechanisms and secret passages had been set up. When he was designing them, Lin Yuan's requirement was that even if the monster kings came to the City of Trade to cause trouble, they couldn't kill their way out of the residential areas within 4 hours without using the transmission formation. The small fries of the outer sea monster beasts below the Monster King realm were locked in a fierce battle with the gray-scaled flood dragon people in the residential areas. However, there were also about 30 monster kings who were madly charging towards the palace. After all, they had the advantage in terms of cultivation base. Even if the gray-scaled flood dragon people were well-equipped, they only needed to force their way in. Once they opened up a passage, the outer sea monster beasts they brought over would naturally entangle the gray-scaled flood dragon people, who couldn't surround them again. Therefore, in general, although the outer sea monster beasts suffered more casualties, they were still advancing steadily. We're still lacking a lot of high-end combat power. Lin Yuan sighed. He coiled his body in front of the palace, and looked at the approaching monster kings with an extremely cold gaze. The monster kings in the City of Trade were Cyrus, Tai Wu and its 2 brothers, as well as Boss Crab. Originally, there were also the Monster King experts from the Siren Guild stationed in the City of Trade. However, as the situation at the front lines worsened, they were also transferred away. Being able to hold off the army led by more than 30 Monster Kings with such strength was already a small surprise for Lin Yuan. However, this was still far from Lin Yuan's expectations. After all, the Outer Sea Monster Beasts, the Four Seas Dragon Clan, the Siren Guild, and even some large-scale Siren clans could all bring out more than 30 Monster Kings. Chapter 1227. It was true that the times created heroes, but this did not mean that these heroes would not exist in peacetime. Nothing in this world would appear for no reason. Just like after the change of the Xinwu dynasty, talents appeared in the northern frontier. Now that the endless sea was in chaos, there would naturally be many ruthless characters who would take advantage of the situation. For example, Cao Cao, Liu Bei, and Sun Jian in the Eastern Han dynasty were all examples. The endless sea was destined to not be peaceful in the future because no matter who won this war, the remaining forces would not be able to maintain absolute control of the endless sea, unless they were ruthless enough to wipe out the entire endless sea and pull all the forces back to the line of balance. But that was obviously impossible. No force could withstand a war of this scale. The dragon tribe of the Four Seas could not, nor could the Sea Demon Guild. Even if they joined forces, it would be difficult. Not to mention that the current situation in the Endless Sea was strange and unpredictable. The Heavenly Court Lin Yuan, the God-worshipping religion, the Guardian of the Heavenly Gate, and even some big shots who had yet to show up were all involved. Before the real winner emerged from the competition, the Endless Sea could not be peaceful even if it wanted to. In fact, if it were not for the God-worshipping sect and the Heavenly Court, Lin Yuan would not have minded the Endless Sea being ruled by the demonic beasts from the Outer Sea. That would also be beneficial to his plan on the Tianwu continent. After all, even if he had the system, he did not have such an appetite. If he really had such a stupid idea, he would not have reached where he was today. The demonic beasts from the Outer Sea and the dragon blood demonic beasts were well aware of this. Therefore, they just wanted to exclude Lin Yuan from this circle and not let him have a foothold in the Endless Sea. However, this did not mean that they would casually kill Lin Yuan. But now, with all the forces involved, the situation had developed to the point where it was out of control. Even with Lin Yuan's current strength, he had to deal with it carefully. If he did not take care of it now, when the world was repaired, who knew what level of killing weapon the Endless Sea would prepare for him? Black Jiao, when you helped us take down the Great Wall of Willowshire, we even treated you as a friend. You don't know what's good for you. You actually colluded with a dragon bloodline demonic beast. Since that's the case, today will be the day you die. A round demon king that looked like a seal extended a short claw and pointed at Lin Yuan. The malice in its eyes was so thick that it almost solidified. Say that only if you can kill your way to this king. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth widened, revealing a sinister smile. Then, with a light flick of its tail, a golden cloth slowly unfurled behind it. At the same time, the power of heaven and earth buzzed, and in an instant, it completed the synchronization with Lin Yuan. I am the Dragon King of the Northern Frontier, Lin Yuan. Holding the post-celestial merit treasure, the Dongxian spiritual treasure, the real spirit karma position map. I shall become a god on behalf of the heavens and establish my own divine court. Batu is hereby conferred as the great war god of the Northern Frontier. He enjoys the fortune of the Northern Frontier, suppresses the Northern Frontier, and commands the divine power of the war realm. Kagura is hereby conferred as the rice god of the Northern Frontier. She enjoys the fortune of the Northern Frontier. She enjoys the fortune of the Northern Frontier, and commands the divine power of the grain harvest. Jiao Yi is hereby conferred as the sea god of the Willowshire region of the Endless Sea. He suppresses the sea region, and commands the divine power of the sea region. Tai Kuang, Tai Zhan, and Tai Meng are hereby conferred as the war gods of the Willowshire region of the Endless Sea. They establish the sea god army, and protect the safety of the sea region. Cyrus is hereby conferred as the conspiracy god of the Willowshire region. He is responsible for strategizing in the Willowshire region. His superior is the sea god, and his subordinate is Li Shu. Lin Yuan opened his mouth to speak. The power of heaven and earth hummed, forming a sound of hope. Although it was inaudible, Lin Yuan's words appeared in the mind of every living creature in the Tianwu world. With the completion of Lin Yuan's conferment, 5 names and the corresponding positions of gods suddenly appeared on the golden cloth behind him. This was the power of the map of real spirit karma position. Although it was only an acquired merit spiritual treasure, no one dared to question the power of the map of real spirit karma position. To put it bluntly, if Bo Yikao had not been so useless, Taishang and Haoyan would not have had a chance to compete in the heavenly court. With the map of real spirit karma position, one could establish a divine court, regardless of whether the heavenly way recognized it or not. Just like now, the Tianwu world had not been completed yet. There was no heavenly court or netherworld. Whether it was the Een god's general soul that was worshipped by the various dynasties or the demonic beasts that used the power of incense to prolong their lives, they were all so-called false gods. Before the divine path appeared, they could call themselves gods and enjoy the power of incense. But with the birth of Shinto, these false gods suddenly became unrecognized as obscene offerings. That was to say, they didn't follow the ritual system and didn't offer sacrifices. This kind of sacrifice often quickly declined after the birth of Shinto, because there were rules to it. obscene offerings didn't receive much incense power. Just like what was recorded in the Book of Rites, truly, the worship that was not meant for worship was called false worship. False worship was not a blessing. Of course, this practice also forced a large number of wild gods and evil gods to appear in the world. Just like the neon in the previous life, with the decline of their divine path, most of the once glorious 8 million gods, except for a few who were recognized as orthodox, had degenerated into monsters that committed crimes everywhere. This was also the reason why monster culture was prevalent in Neon. Putting aside the mythological background, it was the fanatics who believed in gods that weren't listed in the orthodox tradition who were doing evil or spreading rumors. But with the mythological background, it meant that after these false gods lost the power of incense, they could only use another method to maintain their own existence. The so-called power of incense was the power of will. No matter if it was respect or fear, it was a type of power of incense. Although the quality of the power of incense was too poor, it was better to harvest it easily and in large quantities. But similarly, the false gods who relied on fear to exist didn't have much divine power, due to the quality of the power of incense. Each was weaker than the last. It was also because of this that the monsters in Neon were so weak. Any warrior who had practiced swordsmanship for more than 10 years could accomplish the feat of killing a god, or a great monster in Neon. Why don't you try doing something like this in Yanhuang? What a joke! Yanhuang did not have many wild gods. Existences like White Lotus were all fabricated by ambitious people. They just used the name of faith to gather ignorant people to satisfy their own ambitions. From Lin Yuan's perspective, of the 8 million gods in Japan, only Shitendaji and Daitengu were worthy of his attention. As for Tamamonome, it was hard to say if she existed. After all, her template was similar to the Zhou dynasty's Daji and India's Huayangshan. Whether it was identity, story, or actions, there was no difference between the three. If Tamamonome really existed, there was a high chance that she was Daji. At the very least, there should be some kind of connection between them. Chapter 12:28. Speaking of the nine-tailed fox, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of the fox girl Kagura from the northern frontier. Although Kagura was a demi-human, she still had the fox tribe's bloodline. Although Seiji didn't know which branch she belonged to, she now had a divine position. Logically speaking, she should have become an eternal existence. As long as he invested enough divine power and resources, it wouldn't be long before he would be able to raise a nine-tailed fox loyal to him. The nine-tailed fox, in many strange stories, only had a cultivation of about 1,000 years. It was considered a great demon, but it was not considered the peak. However, that was the nine-tailed demon fox, not the nine-tailed fox. The difference between the two was huge. In terms of combat power, a cultivator in the Aura's core stage could probably kill a demon fox. However, the nine-tailed fox was different. Looking at the battle record of the nine-tailed fox, the battle between Chiyu and Xianyuan destroyed the entire Green Hill. Only Daji survived the battle. After that, it was the era ruled by Xianyuan. After that, the power was transferred from the 3 kings to the 5 emperors. Diyu established the first dynasty, the Xia dynasty. After 471 years, it was replaced by the Shang dynasty. After another 554 years, it was killed by Dxian. It was also the first tribulation with humans as the protagonists after the human race stepped onto the world stage. The investiture of the gods' tribulation. The investiture of the gods' tribulation was an era where golden immortals walked on the ground and Daoyuo was inferior to dogs. In the later stages of the battle, Tong Tian, Taishang Yuanshi, and the Western Buddhists personally participated. According to the description of the investiture of the gods, even Nuwa participated. Although she did not end up like the other 5 heavenly saints, according to the original book, Daji was arranged by Nuwa to be by Nuwa's side. However, looking at the history, the most interesting thing was that Daji was not a demon concubine. Instead, she was Dxian's good wife. Although her son did not overthrow the rule of the Zhou dynasty, he preserved the bloodline of the Shang dynasty under the influence of Dxian. Later on, the Ying family that destroyed the bloodline of the Zhou dynasty and establish the Great Qin Empire was the bloodline left behind by heir, Lai and Fei Lian of the Shang dynasty. On the other hand, the Empress Jiang, who was greatly praised by the Zhou dynasty, was a theocratic aristocrat through and through. If one were to combine the background of the era, it would not be an exaggeration to call the Empress Jiang a lackey of the heavenly axiom. Even the two sons she gave birth to were traitors who caused the destruction of the Shang dynasty. Therefore, there was no need to doubt who Niuhua favored in that calamity. That was the Holy Mother of the human race. However, she was not as radical as Tang Tian, and did not know about Sanqing's internal scheme. Therefore, she only helped Yinshang and did not directly join the battle with the other 5 sages. Otherwise, did she really think that Shen Gongbao was so influential that he could command all the demons in the world to die for Yinshang with a demon-summoning banner? Rather than the power of the demon-summoning banner itself, it was more accurate to say that it was because the original owner of the demon-summoning banner, Niuhua, had a great reputation. Even if one only looked at these 2 battle records, Daji was a peerless demon who had saved her life from Xianyuan and Qiyu. She had shown extraordinary talents in the investiture of God's cataclysm, and retreated unscathed. After all, from what happened to Huayang Tian and Tamamo no Mei, Jiang Zia did not catch Daji at all. Moreover, Daji had also announced her existence in India and Japan. Compared to the 9-tailed demon fox that could be killed by cultivators who had cultivated for tens or hundreds of years, although the 9-tailed demon fox lacked one word, the power of the two could not be mentioned in the same breath. However, although the map of real spirit karma position was terrifying and could allow one to establish a heavenly court without being recognized by the heavenly axiom, it was not completely without restrictions. For example, when one held the map of real spirit karma position to confer the title of a god, although cultivation and merit were disregarded, one could only confer the place controlled by the holder of the treasure. Although the position of a god was fixed, in essence, it was still in existence like a mountain god or a river god. Its power could only be exerted in the place where it was conferred. If one wanted to become an existence comparable to the heavenly court's immortals, they had to wait until Lin Yuan unified the world before they were promoted. However, this was enough. After the conferment, Jiao Yi Cyrus, and the 3 brothers of the brave crab tribe all silently appeared behind Lin Yuan. Not only had they recovered from their previous injuries, the moment Lin Yuan conferred them the title, they had also received authorization from Lin Yuan. With the power of more than 300 million incense, they could defeat more than 30 demon kings with just one hand. In contrast to Lin Yuan's relaxed and comfortable side, the top experts of the entire Tianwu world went crazy. What was that just now? That was King conferment. Although the current Tianwu world was not complete, the top cultivators had indeed touched the threshold of immortality. They were only one step away from immortality. What they desired the most now was not power and wealth, but to truly be recognized by the world will, and become a god of the Tianwu world. But now a god had appeared. Furthermore, it was the Black Jiao who had personally conferred the title, and even received the recognition and resonance of the world will. In other words, the Black Jiao had only moved his mouth, and 5 existences that they had never even heard of had directly become gods above them. What kind of ability was this? This was the ability of their father. If it was said that the originally flourishing northern frontier had attracted countless talented heroes to join the northern frontier, then after Lin Yuan officially displayed his ability to confer God, the top experts of the Tianwu world all wanted to join Lin Yuan. After all, he only needed to move his mouth, and they would be able to achieve the goal that countless people had been unable to achieve. In life, who didn't want to take 1 or 2 shortcuts? Especially when, as long as he took this shortcut, he would be able to achieve immortality in an instant. Boiling, shocking, exploding. Almost at the instant the conferment ended, countless tyrannical auras suddenly rose. Even some old monsters who had lived in seclusion for many years could not help but come out of the forests and forbidden areas, constantly looking for their former disciples, wanting to see if they could establish a relationship with the northern frontier. Even more exaggerated was the current situation in the Endless Sea. The auras of not less than 100 ancestral monster experts were rapidly approaching the city of trade. Even among the more than 30 monster kings who had joined forces to suppress Lin Yuan, more than a dozen monster kings betrayed them and killed their comrades around them. The temptation of becoming a god was so terrifying. However, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he suppressed the joy in his heart. How could it be so simple to confer God? It was true that the chart of real spirit merit points in his hands could confer God, but after all, it was a merit treasure. Compared to the investiture of the gods, which had been refined by Hongjun, the purpose of which was to control the heavenly court and gods, its function was much more powerful, but it did not have the ability to control the gods on the chart of real spirit merit points. In other words, Lin Yuan did not have the intention to confer God casually. Chapter 1229. In addition, there was a limit to becoming a god. Lin Yuan had just gotten the map of true spirit karma position, so the system gave him a benefit. If one wanted to use the map of true spirit karma position to become a god, he had to worship the sky, the earth, the mountains, the lakes, and the sea. He had to worship the place where he wanted to become a god, just like how workers had to submit their resumes when they were looking for a job. Although he had the map of true spirit karma position, he could force himself to take the position through the back door, but he still had to follow the etiquette. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if he was hated by the will of the world. Besides, since he had to follow the etiquette, he still had to do the inspection. Becoming a god was very metaphysical. It was different from becoming a god naturally, when one's cultivation reached a certain level in fantasy novels. A real god had to be recognized by the heavens and the earth. Like some of the supernatural novels in Lin Yuan's previous life, only the real gods could become a god as long as one's ability and virtue met the requirements of becoming a god. Even a mortal could become a god, such as Song Dao, who became a city god, and Bao Zheng, who broke the netherworld. Of course, since the map of true spirit karma position was in Lin Yuan's hands, in addition to virtue, one had to be loyal to Lin Yuan to become a god. Well, the requirements were not high. If you were as loyal as Fang Yu, let alone a martial saint, you could even be a celestial emperor. As for those who only wanted benefits and did nothing, I suggest you go to bed early. You can have everything in your dreams. At the same time, far away in the imperial palace of Shichi, GFA, who was wearing a white robe and a black robe, overturned the table with fruits in front of him. His handsome face was distorted. He stared at the direction of the boundless sea and roared, "Black Jiao, you've gone too far." GFA had never been weaker than anyone in his life. Whether it was appointing Jiang Zia and the immortal disciples of the Chan sect and the human sect, or subduing the feudal lords to fight against the Shang dynasty, he still gritted his teeth and walked to the end, even though the road ahead was dangerous and unpredictable. He was the one who had the last laugh. However, he had only felt aggrieved once in his life. The fire that burned down Jiaxing Lu and the 500 years of accumulation of Yin Shang had directly shattered his dream of becoming an emperor. Later on, he faked his death and abdicated to begin his cultivation. Although Uncle Guan, Uncle Kai, and Uncle Hu joined forces with Wu Geng to cause a rebellion of the three directorates, which almost destroyed the Zhou dynasty, and later on powerful officials such as the Duke of Zhou appeared to control the government, it only made him a little dissatisfied, but he did not feel anything else. After all, immortality was the most important thing to GFA back then. As for Dynasty's foundation, he had already gotten over it. Later, GFA came to the world of heaven and martial arts by chance. He found that the three Daos of heaven, earth and man were not born in this world, so he immediately started to plan. Not only did he create West Qi, but he also created a small celestial court according to the model of the untainted land. As the will of the world grew stronger day by day, he was selected as the first celestial emperor. If he continued to develop at this pace, he even had a 60% chance of imitating Hongjuan's style in the future, stealing the way of heaven of this world, and becoming a supreme ruler. But it just had to be this time. When the will of the world was about to be completed, Lin Yuan actually rushed to establish a celestial court in front of him. Although this did not affect his position as the celestial emperor, it was impossible to say that it did not affect him at all. Taking advantage of the time difference, Lin Yuan's celestial court could select most of the top talents in the world of heaven and martial arts even with his eyes closed, leaving a bunch of ugly melons and cracked dates that the Black Jiao did not like to be the immortals of his celestial court. When the time came, not to mention stealing the way of heaven, even when competing for incense, whether the celestial court could beat the celestial court was a problem. This was called intercepting the celestial court's victory. What was the difference between this and the years when Dxian burned the savings of the Shang dynasty and left him with a devastated land and shattered his dream of becoming the emperor? Even after the ancient times, the descendants would only evaluate him as King Wu of the Zhou dynasty. But so what if the emperor of the Shang dynasty was smeared as an eternal tyrant by him? Wasn't he still respectfully called Dxian? Bang. He also wanted to be respectfully called DFA. Burning with anger, GFA's originally white and gentle skin turned red, as if it was plated with a layer of blood. His face was distorted to the extreme as he roared hoarsely. Pass down my order, the entire West Qi army begins to prepare. I want to destroy the Tianlan dynasty within half a year, and then directly march to the Yun nation. I want to see if West Qi can compete with the puppet king on the northern frontier, for the vacant position of the human king. GFA was also a person behind the scenes. Although he couldn't deduce most of Lin Yuan's overall plan, some superficial things couldn't escape his eyes. Currently, the Black Jiao had obtained the ability to confer deities, including the establishment of the pseudo-god system on the northern frontier, the establishment of the god's court, and the official conferment of deities. Lin Yuan didn't include the human experts under his command twice in a row. If it was someone else, it might be due to the issue of loyalty, but conferring the title of God on Li Zhong wasn't a problem. After all, everything that Li Zhong had now came from Lin Yuan's trust, and he had indeed gone through the test. However, Lin Yuan had missed out on Li Zhong twice in a row. This forced him to think about it one more time. It was obvious that the Black Jiao wasn't an honest person. While he decided on the position of God of the underworld, he also tried to make the northern frontier become the human power that ruled the Tianwu world. Then he pushed Li Zhong to the position of human king. Even if Li Zhong also became one of the rulers of the three realms, the current situation would still be maintained. He didn't dare to say that when the time came, Li Zhong would still listen to Lin Yuan's words. However, as long as the two sides maintained a good relationship, it was enough to be a fatal threat to him, the celestial emperor. Not to mention, Lin Yuan had also established his own god's court and opened the path to deification before the heavenly court. He'd schemed for so many years and paid so many prices for this game of chess. Yet he suddenly realized that if he were to continue watching from behind the scenes, then he would probably be kicked out by the Black Flood Dragon before he could even make it to the next stage. GFA didn't have many good ways to deal with Lin Yuan. He could only imitate the heavenly court of the chaotic world. After establishing a firm foothold, he could set up a Fengdu hell to seize the authority of the netherworld and suppress the status of the netherworld. Unfortunately, Lin Yuan wasn't the Empress Pingxin who was trapped in the netherworld. He also wasn't a rare existence like Hongjun. He didn't know if he would be a match for the Black Jiao. Therefore, the most important thing at the moment was to stop Li Zhong from becoming the human king. Even if he defeated the Shiqi dynasty and suffered heavy losses with the northern frontier, benefiting the rulers of the other dynasties, he still had to fight to the death with the northern frontier. Chapter 1230. Although he knew that the top experts in the heavenly martial world were staring at him, Lin Yuan was not moved at all. The world was bustling with activity. Everyone came for benefits and left for benefits. He did not even need to open his mouth. He only needed to express his intentions, and there would be countless experts who would help him deal with it properly. If the other party was after something else, Lin Yuan would definitely agree to it. However, this time, the other party was after the deity position in his hands. To be honest, there was no upper limit to the number of gods that could be conferred. A mountain or a river could confer 2 gods. However, it was never a good thing for the number of gods to increase. After all, it was related to the gods. No matter what, it could not be avoided. As the saying goes, humans fight for their dignity, Buddhas fight for their incense. Sometimes, for the power of incense, some immortals would do things that were even worse than demons and ghosts. For example, in Chapter 87 of Journey to the West, there was no rain in Fengxian County for 3 years. The Jade Emperor even set up 3 difficult problems: chicken eating rice, dog licking noodles, and fire burning locks. Only then would Fengxian County rain again. The cause of the entire incident was a quarrel between a military couple in Fengxian County. Coincidentally, they overturned the table that was enshrined in the Jade Emperor. Coincidentally, there was a dog that ate the offerings that fell on the ground. Hence, the Jade Emperor thought it was disrespectful and offended the heavens. For such a trivial matter, there was no rain in Fengxian County for 3 years. Only God knew how many people had died in the 3 years of drought. If the young were strong, they could leave their homes and find another way to survive. However, the old, weak, women, and children did not have the ability to move. Furthermore, during the journey to the west, even the Dongsheng Divine Continent, which had the best environment, was run amok by demons. When mortals left their homes, they would most likely be eaten by demons. Was the Jade Emperor really such a petty person? Obviously not. This was just a tacit understanding between immortals. No matter how much they needed the incense power provided by the mortals, they still had to be polite. If anyone offended them, they would punish them with thunderous means. Their purpose was only to warn the mortals that they had to worship them and believe in them obediently. On the other hand, those demons and devils who opened their sects and ate humans to commit evil acts were unscrupulous. The few demon kings who were captured and sent to the heavens monster-slaying platform were basically existences that had offended the dignity of the heaven. And this was only the method used against external forces. The inner conflict between immortals was even more serious. For example, during the God Investiture Tribulation, the disciples of the Chan sect, the Ren sect, and the Jie sect went down the mountain to fight. Apart from the factor of being on the tribulation list, who could say for sure that there was no factor of Taoism behind it? After the inner scroll of the Celestial Sect of Wonders ended, it was the inner scroll of the Celestial Sect of Wonders and the Western Sect of Wonders. It was as if the conflict between incense and orthodoxy would never end. The former destroyed the Shang sect, which was strong enough to fight against the cultivation world, while the latter almost completely destroyed the last breath of the demon race. Every time a similar dispute occurred, there would always be countless casualties and irreparable injuries. It was not a good thing to have more immortals because, theoretically speaking, being on the immortal list could make one immortal. But in fact, before the realm of primordial unity golden immortal, one had to go through tribulations such as the 3 calamities and 9 disasters, the 5 decays of heaven and man, and other tribulations. The slightest mistake would lead to death and the destruction of both body and spirit. Immortals had reached the peak of cultivation, and no one, including Hongjun, could continue to cultivate. If one wanted to go further and achieve immortality, one had to rely on the power of incense. Even existences at the level of Buddha and Haoyin had to fight for incense from time to time. How could the other immortals stay out of it? In a few breaths of time, the fighting in the field had ended. Unexpectedly, but reasonably, those who survived the internal strife were all members of the God worship sect who were bent on killing Lin Yuan. It made sense. Even if they were not escapees from the untainted world, they were still the descendants of the escapees. They were not unfamiliar with the classification of the various worlds, not to mention the current Tianwu world. Even if the Tianwu world was promoted to a medium-class world, it would be nothing more than an insignificant speck of dust in the endless sea of bitterness. Becoming an immortal of the Tianwu continent was indeed tempting to them, but the temptation was not great. Moreover, they were all existences who cultivated the untainted world method, which was much stronger than the method cultivated in the spirit space. Even if the side that changed sides was also the Monster King, the fighting strength of the two was completely different. An octopus-like Monster King turned his face and coldly looked at Lin Yuan and the several spirits standing behind him. After a moment of consideration, he swung his tentacles and said coldly, "Black Jiao, I hope the next time we meet, you still have so many tricks up your sleeve. Let's go." Although they were the victors, there were only 12 Monster Kings left. The number of monster kings that had retained their peak combat strength could be counted on one hand. With this kind of combat strength, it was definitely enough to sweep through an ordinary small to medium-sized sea region. However, facing the current city of trade, not to mention the unfathomable black flood dragon that had yet to make a move, even those spirit masters might not be able to deal with it. You come as you wish and leave as you wish. Do you think this is a charity hall? Lin Yuan saw the octopus monster king turn around and leave without any fear, and his eyes could not help but become gloomy. This kind of behavior again. These monster kings of the god worship sect were indeed qualified to be arrogant. After all, the totem group was once in existence that was comparable to the Xian sect. However, in Lin Yuan's eyes, they were not qualified to be arrogant now. After Hongjuan's destructive blow, the totem group could only be regarded as a symbol of an existence. Not to mention absorbing the power of incense, not many people even recognized them. With this, they still regarded themselves as a high and mighty existence, looking down on all living beings. Hearing Lin Yuan's words, the octopus monster king paused. Its eyes were gloomy like water. It said in a cold voice, "Black Jiao, what you have here has nothing to do with us. We are just following orders to flatten the city of trade. Now that things are out of control, we will admit defeat and leave. What else do you want us to do? Kneel down and pour tea for you?" "There is no need to pour tea and apologize." Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and said in an equally cold tone, "I just want to say, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave today." "Humph." The octopus monster king snorted coldly. The remaining monster kings all stood behind it. In terms of momentum, they did not lose to Lin Yuan, who had the upper hand. It seemed that they still had something to rely on. Of course, they did not come in front of Lin Yuan. Naturally, they would not take out all their trump cards. If they did not have something to rely on, it would be the biggest joke. However, Lin Yuan did not think that these monster kings of the god worship sect could withstand his anger. Chapter 1231. Black Jiao, you'd better think this through. Seeing that Lin Yuan did not say anything and had no intention of letting them go, the octopus demon king said with a gloomy face, "Although you've learned a variety of things, including the path of gods, immortals, demons, and the netherworld, we can see that you mainly cultivate the ancient path of totems. If not, why would you let a human manage the vast northern frontier?" At this point, it paused and added, "So you should know very well how terrifying the power of a cultivator of the path of totems can be once he explodes. Do you really want to fight to the death with us?" The three bravest crab brothers did not say anything. Being conferred the position of gods was already a great opportunity that they did not even dare to think about in the past. Now that they were completely convinced by Lin Yuan, they naturally had to know their priorities and would not speak carelessly. Cyrus also glanced at the octopus demon king with a meaningful look in its eyes. Jiao Wen stood behind Lin Yuan obediently. Lin Yuan grinned and turned to look at Jiao Wen. He said calmly, "You heard it too. They're very terrifying when they explode. Willow Rock region is your territory, so I respect your opinion. Let them stay or let them leave. It's your choice." Jiao Wen was slightly stunned. Clearly, he did not expect Lin Yuan to hand this question to him. After a moment of silence, Jiao Wen knew that if it were him in the past, he would definitely say something like, "I'll follow the orders of the Dragon King." However, the current Jiao Wen had matured a lot after leaving Lin Yuan for a period of time. In addition to Tai Zun and Cyrus' impressions, although he was not strong enough to take charge, he was gradually taking on the responsibility of a king. Therefore, Jiao Wen did not immediately answer Lin Yuan's question. Instead, he glanced at the gray-scaled flood dragon people who were fighting. Then he clenched his teeth and looked at the octopus demon king. He said coldly, "The Dragon King is right. The city of trade has never been a charity. No person or force can cause trouble in the city of trade. It's impossible to come and go as you please. Today, you suddenly attacked the city of trade and realized that you couldn't do anything and left. If you come back tomorrow or the day after, what will I do? Do I have to let you go every time out of fear? You're just a dog under Black Jiao. What right do you have to talk to this king?" The octopus king's expression changed several times. He turned to Lin Yuan and said, "Dragon King, what do you think? Or are you sure you want to make a deadly enemy of our god worship sect? It was your church of gods that provoked this king first. This king's personality has always been like this." Lin Yuan slowly straightened his body. His eyes were cold as he laughed. "Since you've offended me, you'll have to wait for my crazy revenge. This king has been famous for a long time. So, this king is allowed to have a deadly feud with the Church of Gods, but this king is not allowed to retaliate against you? Since the sea god you're loyal to has spoken, then, what are you waiting for?" The moment his voice fell, the 3 brothers of the brave crab clan had already roared out, and went straight to the 12 monster kings. When they heard Jiao Yi's words, they already knew the final direction of this matter. At the same time, they were very clear in their hearts that this matter was not a conflict between 2 forces at all. This was a full-blown war from start to finish. In war, there were grand and magnificent frontal battles, as well as bizarre and unpredictable schemes. However, there was no such thing as giving in or compromising, because only the losers would give in and compromise. Before the end of the war, such actions could be called schemes. No one wanted to have a poisonous snake behind them, thinking about them day and night. So when there was a chance to cut the grass, they had to remove the roots. Not to mention these monsters from the Church of Gods that had attacked the City of Trade. They didn't even intend to let go of the Church of Gods that had plotted everything. "How dare you?" The octopus monster king was even more shocked and angry. As he roared, the monster power in his body surged out like a majestic river. He didn't retreat or avoid, but directly met the 3 brothers of the brave crab clan. Although he also knew that the Black Jiao and the Church of Gods were gradually showing signs of incompatibility, even if the Black Jiao was afraid of the strength and foundation of the Church of Gods in the future, and didn't retaliate against the Church of Gods, how could the Black Jiao's foundation be weak? In the future, as long as the Black Jiao was alive and the City of Trade existed, the Church of Gods would be firmly suppressed in the outer sea, and would never be able to enter the truly rich deep sea area. Not to mention, with the constant fighting between the various dynasties in the Tianwu world, the Tianwu continent was being unified, and the northern frontier was the force that was most likely to unify the Tianwu continent. At that time, the Church of Gods would have an even harder time. The relationship between the 2 sides was like this. In any case, Lin Yuan couldn't just stand by and watch them plot against him behind his back. Although the Octopus Monster King was also aware of this point, it really couldn't do anything today. After all, for them, although the desire to erase Lin Yuan was not as strong as the Heavenly Court, since they were already on the opposite side, they couldn't provide convenience for Lin Yuan. Today, if they were defeated in the hands of Lin Yuan's new god, who knew how many ambitious people who wanted to become gods would want to directly destroy the Church of Gods as a congratulatory gift to ask for a god position. Although the Church of Gods was not afraid of these natives of the Tianwu world, lice could still bite people to death. As long as the Tianwu world was not promoted to a medium-class world, the Almighty of the Church of Gods would not be able to recover their previous cultivation. These natives of the Tianwu world had the possibility of grinding them to death. Therefore they could be defeated, or they could be killed. But it definitely couldn't be today, let alone here. All of you retreat quickly. I'll cover you. The Octopus Monster King's face was gloomy. The silent totem power in his body slowly circulated. He looked at Lin Yuan with a dignified face and said in a deep voice, "Although I don't know where you get the courage, you must pay the price for being an enemy of the Church of Gods." Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't answer, but his eyes were fixed on the Octopus Monster King. The counterattack of a totem was no laughing matter. Even if it was an insignificant totem, it could accumulate a large amount of incense power under the circumstances of an opportunity. The sudden eruption of power could be said to be destructive. Oh no, it wants to self-destruct. Cyrus's face changed several times. He stretched out his tentacles and aimed at the Octopus Monster King. A large amount of ink shot out in an attempt to kill the Octopus Monster King, before it could complete the accumulation of energy. However, it was intercepted by an invisible energy. Suddenly, a hint of panic appeared in Cyrus's eyes. It was impossible for the self-destruction of a demon king to accumulate energy for such a long period of time. It was even more impossible for the energy to condense into a physical form just by gathering energy. Chapter 1232. At this moment, the Octopus King was about to self-destruct. Suddenly, Lin Yuan's high school shot out a 7-colored light. This 7-colored light directly enveloped the Octopus King. At this moment, everything returned to calm. The Octopus King seemed to have fallen into a pool of mud. All the power in his body couldn't explode at all. "This is," Lin Yuan snorted coldly. "A mere demon king dares to show off in front of me." Then, in the midst of this 7-colored light, a black light spread out directly. Like an iron chain, it locked the Octopus King. Then there were bursts of black flames. It directly swallowed him. At this moment, the other 12 demon kings were all stunned. They had traveled extensively and had seen some things. But today, they were not prepared at all. They didn't even have the power to make people self-destruct. "Even if you kill us today, the God worship sect will be irreconcilable with you." The other demon kings were still shouting loudly. They felt that this was the only way to save their lives. However, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. "As for the rest, kill them all." At this moment, with this action and this sentence, the people in the city of trade seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Then he rushed forward. Collision. The most intense collision. These two sides began to fight as if they didn't care about their lives. But anyone could see that these demon kings were no match for them at all. Lin Yuan glanced at these people sinisterly. "Leave one alive. Let them know that my city of trade is not a place where they can come and go as they wish. And I'm not afraid of this so-called God worship sect at all." After saying this, he directly turned and left. In addition to these things in front of him, he had another thing to do. He had already seen that after the Octopus King died, there was a shining seal. At this moment, he directly floated over and took the seal in his hand. He knew that no matter what he wanted to do at this moment, no one would resist. And now, when everyone saw Lin Yuan's actions at this moment, they could only believe in him. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan just smiled slightly and took the seal in his hand. Then a force probed in. Suddenly, he seemed to have entered a special space. Monster graveyard. On a huge rock, there were 4 murderous words written on it. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan was stunned. Because he felt that at this moment, all the power in his body and even all the treasures had no response. It was as if he couldn't control his body at all. At this moment, in front of him was something like an altar. Eggs were placed on top of the altar. However, the color of each egg was different. Lin Yuan felt that his body seemed to begin to respond to these eggs. This feeling was very strange. It was as if he had been thrown into a world that had nothing but was filled with all kinds of energy. And these eggs were his only connections to these worlds. His hand finally touched the first red egg. The moment he touched it, there was a flash of light. At this moment, he felt a scorching force rising in his hand. Then he used a ball of fire to explode it in his hand. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. It felt a bit like he was touching a burning furnace. The system didn't give any notification. At this moment, it was as if the system had malfunctioned. Tianwu World. There was actually such a strange place. Lin Yuan released his hand. He couldn't use any methods now, but he could feel how terrifying the power contained in this answer was. It even made his heart palpitate a little. What are these things? He immediately placed his hand on the second egg. But this time it was an extremely cold force. 5 elements. Such an idea immediately arose in Lin Yuan's mind. Because he could clearly feel that at this moment, everything changed. Then he directly walked towards the 3 eggs. He separately sensed the attributes of these eggs. Then he went to check other places. The entire space was empty, only a merciless white. He had already sensed the 5 attribute eggs. However, he didn't know what to do. And this special seal, what was its use? Lin Yuan lightly shook his head. I didn't expect the Demon King to have such a thing on him. I underestimated them. But at this moment, a door suddenly rose from the side of the altar. There were countless talismans on this door, and many bells. At this moment, all the bells swayed, and the talismans danced. At this moment, Lin Yuan felt the surrounding aura change. Even the 5 attribute eggs began to faintly show some cracks. Then rays of light were projected onto the eggs. Then the door exploded in front of him. A clear howling sound came from the other side of the door. Demon Beast Graveyard. Lin Yuan instinctively felt that this place should be the main location of the so-called Demon Beast Graveyard. But immediately, a gust of strong wind directly gushed out from inside. Lin Yuan gently shook his head, then dodged to the side. If it was in the past, he wouldn't be afraid of this so-called strong wind at all. With his strength, it was nothing. But in this special space he couldn't use any means at all. So at this moment, he could only dodge. In the end, before he could react, a huge suction force directly sucked him into the door. He was stunned. But after entering the array and seeing everything in the array, he suddenly had a guess in his heart. In front of him, there was a blood-red river. Or more accurately, a blood sea. This is probably not the blood river array. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, the blood river array began to surge. Good. I didn't expect to encounter the blood river array, which is as famous as the 9 Bends Yellow River array. Today, I don't need to use any cultivation to break this blood river array. Lin Yuan stood upright. Looking at the churning blood in front of him, he took a step forward and stepped forward. At this moment, he felt a special power surging within him. It was as if there was something hidden in the blood river. Chapter 1233. Before Lin Yuan could take a step forward, a special figure appeared in front of him. It was a man dressed in armor. He stood in the middle of the blood river. He had a knife in his hand, and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. Ha! With a loud shout, the man's knife slashed towards him. At this moment, Lin Yuan had no way to dodge the attack. However, the eggs he touched before actually worked. The 5 attribute eggs from before had imprinted 5 special imprints on his hands. At the same time as the knife slashed towards him, Lin Yuan directly blocked it with his hand. The scorching imprint from the beginning of the creation seal worked. A raging fire emerged from his hand. The bright light illuminated the entire blood river, making it look awe-inspiring. Lin Yuan directly took the opponent's knife with one hand. But at the same time, the man in armor seemed to be stepping on flat ground as the blood water dragged him up. Then he let it fall. Then the man's knife, with a touch of blood, slashed towards Lin Yuan's head again. Lin Yuan sneered, "You're just a demon, not even a demon king. You want to fight me with your strength?" He charged straight ahead. At this moment, the bottom of his feet began to touch the ice shards. The second imprint worked, freezing. The entire blood river began to freeze. At this moment, the man could no longer connect with everything here. Lin Yuan just shook his head lightly. This great blood river array really disappointed him with only this level of strength. However, before he could rejoice, the ice under his feet began to crack. One by one, people in armor rushed out of the blood sea. Lin Yuan's eyes wandered. He had already seen that these guys were all condensed from the blood sea that seemed to be surging with waves. If he wanted to kill them, he had to break the blood sea under his feet first. Lin Yuan took a step forward. This time he did not hesitate. He used the fire imprint on his left hand, and the ice imprint on his right. The 2 imprints worked at the same time. On the blood sea, there was fire on one side and ice on the other. Those guys who had just come out of the water were all dealt with at this moment. Lin Yuan smiled. The blood river grand array was only so-so. However, his actions had also caused him to take a few steps forward. Because of that, he had also entered the grand blood river formation. The corners of Lin Yuan's eyes lifted slightly. Of course he noticed this change, but he didn't care. In his opinion, this so-called change was completely insignificant. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been frightened long ago. However, he would never be frightened by this scene before him. At this moment, the surface of the water started to churn. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. The guy who had been hiding under the blood sea was finally going to reveal himself. He retreated slightly. The ice cracked and blood splattered everywhere. The flames were immediately extinguished. Lin Yuan wasn't afraid at all. At this moment, he clearly saw that the octopus demon king hadn't died. Human, you shouldn't have made an enemy of the god worship sect. The octopus kept bobbing up and down in the blood sea. Lin Yuan sneered. I thought it was something amazing. It turned out to be a good-for-nothing guy like you. He directly mocked the Octopus Demon King. At this moment, the Octopus Demon King laughed. In this blood sea, you actually dare to shout at me. Let's see how arrogant you can be. After he finished speaking, he leaped into the air. At the same time, suddenly, several chains appeared under his feet. Each of its tentacles was holding a chain. As it moved, the thing locked under the chain finally revealed its true appearance. They were ferocious dragons. Or rather, giant pythons were more appropriate. They didn't have horns on their heads, but their bodies had exceeded the limit of pythons. They were almost towering. In this situation, the giant pythons began to bare their fangs and brandish their claws. They seemed to know that if the Octopus Demon King released the chains, they would rush up. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. I was wondering how you could not die in this situation. You can even be reborn from a drop of blood. It seems that it's because of these things. The Octopus Demon King laughed. Of course. Otherwise, why would I, a Demon King, use such a method to fight you? After he finished speaking, he had already released the chains in his hands. At this moment, the giant pythons had already broken through the restrictions of the blood sea and opened their bloody mouths toward Lin Yuan. Rays of light spurted out from these guys' mouths. It was as if at this moment, Lin Yuan had become their food. Lin Yuan awakened the third mark. A layer of golden light immediately shone on his body. This was the metal attribute. It covered his entire body with a thick layer of crops. No matter how big and powerful these giant pythons were, they couldn't break through his defense. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and glanced at the Octopus Demon King in front of him. Forget it. Since you didn't deal with me before, why don't you do it now? Immediately after, a green light suddenly rose from his side. Giant trees appeared majestically from his side. The huge vines turned into long dragons one after another. In an instant, they intertwined with these guys. In the battle between the two, Lin Yuan actually had the upper hand. The Octopus Demon King's face was full of disbelief. What's going on? How can you be so strong in this blood core battle? And you can even use these special powers? Lin Yuan smiled gently. You must have forgotten that this is Tianwu. And you should also know that there are times when people defy the heavens. There's always a way out. Lin Yuan took a step forward and rushed forward. This time, all the imprints on his hands evaporated. They directly took effect on the Octopus Demon King's body. At this moment, the Octopus Demon King's body exploded. The giant pythons also directly returned to the bottom of the sea. Without the Octopus Demon King's control, they would no longer pay the price of the blood sea. Lin Yuan felt that his strength was recovering bit by bit. However, he knew that there were more giant pythons hidden in this blood river great array. What he wanted was what was under the water. Under this blood sea, there was still something that hadn't revealed itself. Lin Yuan fiercely slapped the blood river, causing the water to surge. He also activated the power of his own mark. The blood water continued to evaporate. And under this sea of blood, there was actually a sparkling stone. The stone was transparent, but there was a beauty inside with her eyes closed. She seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Chapter 1234. Lin Yuan carefully sized up the woman in the stone. To be exact, she wasn't a person. Although her upper body was that of a human, her lower body was that of a snake's tail. Lin Yuan slightly narrowed his eyes. This was the symbol of the Nuwa clan. A human body with a snake's tail. Lin Yuan knew that the person sealed inside was definitely several times stronger than an ordinary monster king. He could even sense the energy fluctuations inside. Lin Yuan lightly patted the stone. However, the woman inside didn't seem to be able to sense anything. Lin Yuan directly pressed his hand on the stone, and then slowly awakened the imprint on his hand. In that instant, the woman inside the stone seemed to sense something. She opened her eyes abruptly. However, those blood-red eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. Human, are you the one who suppressed me here? The woman's first words directly broke through his thoughts. Lin Yuan didn't expect that just waking up this woman would cause her to hate him so much. Let me remind you that I was only forced to enter here. Although I don't really want to explain it to you, I'm not used to admitting things that I didn't do. Lin Yuan said softly. His eyes were already filled with murderous intent. To him, he had the ability to ascend to godhood at any time, so he didn't care about these so-called gods. Not to mention the woman in front of him, who was of the same race as the Niwa clan. Even Pangu wouldn't be able to do anything. Let me out, and I'll agree to whatever conditions you have, the woman said again. However, this time, her voice didn't come from her mouth. Instead, it was directly transmitted into Lin Yuan's mind. He slightly narrowed his eyes. She could agree to any conditions? So arrogant? Who are you? Lin Yuan directly asked. However, the woman seemed to have lost her patience. Lin Yuan looked at the woman indifferently. If you don't say anything, I'll pretend that I never came here. Finally, the woman's expression changed. The anger in her eyes had already disappeared. I'm a member of the Niwa clan. However, back then, I faked Lady Niwa's decree and waved the myriad demon banner, which attracted 100,000 monsters and the monster kings from all directions. That's why Maiden Niwa released him into this unknown world. Lin Yuan nodded, looking rather honest. So you are related to that woman. However, right after he said those words, the Niwa clan member's expression changed. You must not disrespect Her Highness. However, her words were still too late. Not only did Lin Yuan say this, but he also directly pressed his hand on the stone. At this moment, countless cracks had already appeared on the stone. It was as if it was going to explode at any moment. At this moment, a sudden burst of light engulfed the woman and Lin Yuan. When Lin Yuan opened his eyes again, he found himself standing in a barren wilderness. He was surrounded by endless yellow sand. Although there was a city not far away, it was already in ruins. Lin Yuan looked at it gently, a trace of light flashing through his eyes. In such a barren and dilapidated place, there should be people living in the headquarters. However, everything seemed so different. The most obvious thing was that it was human. Before Lin Yuan could say anything, the woman had already begun to struggle on the ground. There was some pain in her expression. You're not afraid of death. Do you know that you almost killed the two of us just now? However, as she spoke, her divinity had already begun to shrink. Lin Yuan frowned as he looked at the woman on the ground. She didn't look like a human at all. She was clearly a slender little white snake. Lin Yuan directly coiled the white snake around his wrist. At this moment, the white snake was staring at him, its bright red tongue constantly sticking out of its mouth. Lin Yuan smiled. I didn't ask for your name before. Since you've become a white snake, I'll call you Little White. He had always taken things as they came. In any case, there were no signs at this time and place. Since he came to this unfamiliar place, he might as well take a stroll around. However, what he didn't expect was that as soon as he stepped into the earthen city, he found a group of people in tattered clothes kneeling on the ground. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan was slightly stunned. What kind of sacrificial ceremony was this? However, there was a god in this place. Lin Yuan had just stepped in when a person suddenly appeared in front of him. It was a long-haired man wearing armor and holding a long spear in his hand. Who are you? You don't know that the statue of the Night Patrol God is here. Why aren't you kneeling? Night Patrol God? Lin Yuan frowned slightly. He didn't expect that there would be a god in such a remote and barren place. However, he was in existence that could become a god. They would kneel to an unknown god here. He could even kill a demon king, not to mention a small god here. When the man saw that Lin Yuan was still indifferent, he snorted coldly. This is not a place for you to behave atrociously. If you don't kneel, I'll take your life. Lin Yuan just smiled. Then please. Lin Yuan's words stunned everyone around him. Some people even looked at him in disbelief. What's wrong with this young man? If he angers the Night Patrol God, I'm afraid he'll suffer again. That's right, young man. If you're not willing to kneel and worship the Night Patrol God, then leave this place. Don't stay here with us. In the end, you'll only harm us. Doubts filled Lin Yuan's ears. Bah. Bullsh *T Night Patrol God. He ruined my family. Suddenly, A voice came from the side. It was a child who was only 7 or 8 years old. His hair was messy and his clothes were ragged. However, he still stubbornly threw stones at them. Lin Yuan looked at the boy and his heart skipped a beat. None of these people could compare to a child. At least he knew that he had to resist this so-called night patrol god. Finally, the long-haired man stabbed at the little boy with a long spear. "Little bastard, if you don't respect a god, you'll only end up dead." With a quiet sound, the long spear stabbed out. However, it didn't pierce the little boy's body. Lin Yuan had already blocked in front of the little boy. At this moment, Lin Yuan smiled and said directly, "I'm afraid it's not appropriate to attack a child. After all, he's still a child." His tone was calm as if he was comforting him. However, at this moment, the long-haired man stabbed at Lin Yuan with his spear. However, the long spear didn't pierce his body. Instead, it broke when it came into contact with his body. Chapter 1235. However, the spear did not pierce his body. Instead, it broke when it came into contact with his body. The long-haired man was shocked. "Who are you?" However, Lin Yuan did not respond to him. He took the child's hand and walked toward the statue. "Kid, how about I take you to smash that statue?" He ignored the horrified eyes of the crowd, took the child's hand, and walked to the side of the statue. At first, the little boy was a little scared when he saw the little white snake in his hand. But at this moment, all the fear disappeared. Instead, he took the initiative to grab Lin Yuan's hand and walk to the side. He even picked up a stone on the ground. Lin Yuan smiled slightly, but the long-haired man raised his arm and shouted, "Guards of the god worship sect in the border, there is someone plotting a rebellion. Come out." At this moment, neat shouts resounded through the whole place. A pair of soldiers in bright armor had already rushed out with spears in their hands. They were originally in another direction, but when they heard the man's shout, they all rushed over. Lin Yuan did not move. He glanced at the statue of the god of night, and snorted coldly. "Are you also from the god worship sect? It seems that this so-called god worship sect is real. They accept all kinds of shrimp soldiers and crab generals." After Lin Yuan finished speaking, the soldiers next to him shouted, "How dare you, unfilial son!" Then they rushed directly toward him. The little boy was a little scared and wanted to dodge. Lin Yuan just smiled faintly. "Smash it." The little boy glanced at Lin Yuan. He did not know where the courage came from, but he directly threw the stone in his hand at him. "Dong! How dare you provoke the gods? Do you know what kind of crime this is?" Lin Yuan did not even look at these soldiers. Instead, he gently put his hand on the statue. Then, the statue began to shatter. It turned into stones on the ground. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan lowered his head and glanced at the little boy. "Look, you've avenged your parents with your own hands." After Lin Yuan finished his words, Kai Ming turned around and looked at the soldiers who were rushing towards him. Then he coldly spat out a word, "Scram." This sentence instantly caused everyone present to retreat involuntarily. They were only mortals. He was no match for Lin Yuan at all. However, even though they were terrified and kept retreating, they didn't seem to want to give up just like that. "Good boy, you've inspired the people of the Church of God to destroy the statue of the god of night in front of everyone. Today, you will die without a doubt." Lin Yuan didn't say anything. He just took a step forward, and the others immediately scattered in all directions. Not only the soldiers, but even the people around them immediately turned around. Some of them even began to quietly retreat. The little boy raised his little face and asked Lin Yuan, "Big brother, why are they so afraid?" Lin Yuan chuckled softly, "Because they feel that they should be the ones enslaved, so they don't dare to resist." As soon as Lin Yuan said this, the little boy gently patted Lin Yuan's body. "Big brother, I don't feel that I should be the one enslaved." Lin Yuan smiled slightly. He looked at the child's slightly stubborn and strong face. She gently stroked his head. "Of course not. There are more courageous than them." However, what he didn't expect was that the little boy directly knelt down at this moment. "Big brother, please accept me and follow you." His face was extremely serious. At this moment, he seemed to have pinned all his hopes on Lin Yuan. At this time, the little snake began to spit out as if it was a warning. The little boy stepped back in fear. Lin Yuan gently shook his head. If the so-called god of night in front of him wasn't a member of the god worship sect, he definitely wouldn't have destroyed all of this. However, he clearly knew that he and the god worship sect had long been irreconcilable, so there was no need to leave the front. Moreover, it was the other party who spoke rudely first. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used such a method to deal with them. Sighing softly, Lin Yuan directly took a step forward. Little brother, it's not that easy to pursue me. You have to make others suffer more. He didn't directly cut off the little boy's hope. He also knew that the little boy had no relatives now, so he didn't want to cut off the little boy's flame of hope. He must leave this place. He couldn't stay in Border City forever. Lin Yuan prepared to leave directly. However, he didn't expect the little boy to run directly in front of him, and then grab the little snake wrapped around his wrist. Big brother, I'm not afraid. Take me with you. Look, I'm not afraid of the snake on your hand. Lin Yuan sighed in his heart. However, he immediately had a new idea. Why not just arrange for the little boy to stay here, and let him directly become a god? As soon as this idea appeared in his mind, the little snake twisted its body. Little White, it seems that you agree with my idea. He was just finding an excuse for himself. And Little White didn't know anything at all. He didn't know what he was thinking. Little guy, if you really want to follow me, you have to be prepared. For example, you have to stand in the desert for a while now, until it's dark. Lin Yuan's condition could be said to be harsh. The temperature difference between day and night in the desert was already large. Now that the sun was already setting in the west, the temperature in this place would plummet in a while. Not to mention that the little boy was wearing thin clothes. Even if he wore thick clothes, he might not be able to resist the night chill. Moreover, desert wolves often appeared in this place. Although it was a remote and desolate place, the probability of demon beasts appearing in this place was also very high. Lin Yuan felt that he was simply courting death by doing so. However, the little boy nodded firmly. He ran directly into the desert outside. Lin Yuan always turned around and walked into the restaurant in the Earth City. He ordered some food and also some wine. Then he sat on the city wall and kept looking at the little boy. The little boy's stubbornness was very similar to his. That was why he had such a special idea. He wanted to directly take the little boy to his side. However, what he didn't expect was that the little guy's stubbornness was actually comparable to his. He even dared to directly run out in this situation. Lin Yuan sighed softly. He originally wanted to let the little boy know the difficulties and retreat, but now it seemed that it wouldn't work. Chapter 1236. Lin Yuan did not expect the little boy to be so obsessed with him. At this moment, he even seemed to have other thoughts, because he had already seen the little boy stand up. And at this moment, he looked directly at the specks of light in the desert. Lin Yuan frowned. He ate and drank while looking at the little boy. The little boy did not even have a weapon in his hand, and he actually went directly towards the specks of light. That should be the desert wolves. A wave of wolf howls spread in all directions. Under such circumstances, Lin Yuan could not help but want to go down and help. But immediately, he shook his head and stopped this thought in his heart, because he could see that at this moment, the little boy's body was actually emitting a special kind of light. Although it was still very weak, it was enough to make the little boy fearless of these desert wolves. Lin Yuan shook his head lightly, but suddenly, he realized that in the depths of the desert, there seemed to be something rushing over here. This discovery surprised him a little. It was an extremely powerful force. Even the demonic aura emitted from its body had reached the level of a demon king. In such a remote and barren place, there was actually a demon king? Lin Yuan looked in that direction with some surprise. As for the little snake on his wrist, it was Little White. With its head held high, it hissed and spat out its string in that direction. Seeing that the little boy was already entangled with the desert wolves, Lin Yuan did not even look at him. Those desert wolves had already begun to roll over. Bite. But the light on the little boy's body directly protected him. Not only did he not suffer any harm, but he also seemed to have received some kind of blessing. Waves of powerful force directly bloomed from his body. At this moment, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not expect to meet such a talented person in this place. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan had already jumped down from the city wall. Although he was still holding the wine bottle in his hand, it did not affect the aura emitted from his body. At this moment, the pack of wolves immediately retreated. Seeing this scene, the little boy stood up with a grunt. I can deal with them myself. I don't need your help. The little boy's tone was still stubborn. However, Lin Yuan did point at the depths of the desert. In the darkness, there seemed to be a monster with its mouth wide open. If it's just a wild beast, I naturally won't help, but, before he could finish his words, a gust of wind blew over. Then it engulfed every inch of this place. The yellow sand that filled the sky covered everyone's eyes. In fact, the sand was like a sharp knife, cutting open wounds on the little boy's body one after another. Seeing this, Lin Yuan took a step forward. A strong wind blew. It directly blocked the yellow sand that filled the sky. Then a flag of the god worship sect emerged from the depths of the desert, shining with a strange light. One after another, they appeared in the desert like bamboo shoots after the rain. The little boy was stunned. Big brother, these guys should be here to make trouble for us. After all, we destroyed the statue of the god of night before. After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan immediately sneered. He had long stopped caring about the statue of the god of night. It could be said that it was just a statue. Even if the god of night really came, he would not be afraid. Although this was a place of hesitation, these people were extremely believers of God. Lin Yuan could feel that the so-called Monster King was not very powerful. However, everything seemed to be accumulating a special aura. This aura was a threat. Lin Yuan shook his head gently. Little brother, are you afraid? The little boy shook his head firmly. Not only was he not afraid, but he was also a little excited. I'm not afraid. I'm just a little curious. Although I don't know what kind of opponent is coming, I feel that as long as you're here, big brother, they won't dare to do anything at all. After saying this, Lin Yuan just shook his head lightly. What if I can lend you some power to deal with these guys? A big idea suddenly surged in Lin Yuan's heart. Although this method seemed very cruel, this was the time to test the little boy. As long as this little boy could hold on, Lin Yuan did not care about having such a personal disciple. After all, the opportunity had already arrived here. From this moment on, his thoughts had already changed. At this moment, all of his thoughts had already begun to be put into action. That was to accept this little boy as his personal disciple. He directly waved his hand gently, and then a ray of energy directly fell from his hand into the little boy's body. All kinds of special energy, did not have any special abilities. It was just to let him be treated fairly with these monster kings. Lin Yuan's change of action stunned the little boy. Big brother, you're the real god, right? Why do I feel that my body is full of power at this moment? He could not believe everything in front of him. He even clenched his fist tightly. A ray of light rose from his fist. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan smiled faintly. This is just me temporarily lending it to you. If you can really defeat the Monster King, I can consider accepting you as my disciple. After saying this, the little boy's eyes burned with a raging fire. He already did not want to be like this anymore. I will definitely do it. I will definitely defeat that Monster King. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure had already rushed forward. Seeing that Lin Yuan did not move, the desert wolf took a step forward and then fiercely hit the little boy's chest. It rolled again, but this time, the little boy's hand was like a sharp claw, directly piercing through the desert wolf's chest and abdomen. Blood splattered. The little boy stood up and turned his gaze to another desert wolf. These desert wolves did not retreat. Instead, they directly rushed forward. Their movements were very fast, and they had already arrived in front of the little boy. The battle began at this moment. The little boy was bathed in blood, and Lin Yuan was indeed drinking at the side. Blood dyed the desert red, and it also attracted the attention of the people in the city. Everything seemed so natural. But it was also so unnatural, because at this moment, the little boy was like a fortress guarding the city gates. Lin Yuan had also discovered the other party's goal. They wanted to rush into the city. Chapter 1237. Finally, the Demon King revealed himself. It was a desert wolf that looked rather large, but now he was completely in human form. He stood upright like a human. He even held a weapon in his hand. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan only glanced sideways. The desert wolf Demon King growled at Lin Yuan. The little boy seemed to have been provoked by something. His figure was already moving faster and faster. It was as if he had long been able to withstand these special attacks. Furthermore, at this moment, all of his movements began to speed up. And at this moment, he could clearly feel that all of the rampaging demonic aura was converging toward the little boy's body. Lin Yuan's discovery made him feel that the little boy was strange. Perhaps he could really take him in as a disciple and let him become a god here. Lin Yuan had just gotten up that year, and the desert wolf Demon King had already fiercely stretched out its claws toward the little boy. This was not to say that he was at a disadvantage, but if it really happened, the little boy would not be able to block it at all. However, this claw did not land on the ground. Although the surrounding air shook, stirring up sand and dust that filled the sky, Lin Yuan discovered that although the little boy was not injured, on the contrary, he actually used his own hands to block the desert wolf Demon King's sharp claws. He gritted his teeth stubbornly. "It's just a Demon King. I won't submit." The little boy used all his strength and used both of his hands to block one of the Demon King's claws. Lin Yuan felt more and more that this kid had the potential to be the main character. Whether it was his resistance or the methods he used with this kind of power, it all meant that this kid was a one-in-a-million martial arts prodigy. Lin Yuan was even considering whether he should create some fantasy cultivation methods and give them to this kid. However, the Demon King did snort coldly. "A little human dares to stop me? You're courting death." After he finished roaring, his body suddenly expanded a lot, and he seemed to carry a special power. At this moment, both Lin Yuan and the little boy were surprised, because at this moment, the Demon King actually appeared in a three-headed and six-armed state. The two of them did not expect this at all. 6 strong arms kept squeezing the little boy's body. That Wolf King was still roaring. "Despicable person, you destroyed my idol. Today, I'm going to wash this place in blood. You lowly people should kneel in the ground and submit." Lin Yuan finally walked over slowly with a bottle of wine in his hand. He glanced at the Wolf King in front of him. "Who said that humans should submit?" After he finished speaking, the Wolf King turned around and let out a furious howl. It was as if his thoughts had been stirred under such circumstances. "That's what I'm saying. In such a big city, not a single person came to stop this king. Instead, they let a little boy fight here. Do you still dare to say that humans aren't despicable?" As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 heads spat out 3 balls of fire. He headed straight for Lin Yuan. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan just sneered. "Little brother, I won't leave this suicidal thing to you today. The test will be carried out in the future. Today, I want to see how capable this guy is." After saying this, Lin Yuan directly threw the wine bottle in his hand. The wine bottle hit the desert wolf Demon King's body and instantly exploded. The wine bottle shattered. The high concentration wine inside swept through the Demon King's body at this moment. Not only that, his body also kept retreating. It was as if he could not withstand the pressure of the wine bottle at all. How is this possible? It's just a wine bottle. How can it be so powerful? His eyes were filled with disbelief. However, Lin Yuan did not give him a chance to regret. In fact, he had already sent out a palm strike. "Kneel down." As soon as he finished speaking, the desert wolf Demon King knelt on the ground, or more accurately, prostrated on the ground. Lin Yuan snorted coldly. "I thought you had become a Demon King, but I didn't expect you to only be a fake Demon King. How dare you call yourself a god?" The desert wolf Demon King was completely stunned. "Who are you? How can you see my level at a glance?" After saying this, he looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. Lin Yuan did not say anything. Instead, he walked towards him step by step and took the little boy's hand. "Kill him. Just being a god is not enough to avenge you. As long as you kill the god of night, you can be considered to have truly avenged yourself." Lin Yuan's words immediately made the desert wolf Demon King's expression change. He had even transformed into his original form, a giant wolf that was 2 meters tall. A whoa! A cry escaped from his mouth. At this moment, the so-called people of the Church of God, who had been waiting obediently at the back, all rushed over at this moment. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan just sneered. In his opinion, these guys were not enough to be called his opponents. The little boy directly stood in front of Lin Yuan. "Big brother, let me deal with them." As soon as he finished speaking, he had already rushed out. At this moment, everyone could clearly see that the little boy had turned into a breeze and began to attract everyone's attention. Lin Yuan was also slightly surprised. He did not expect this little boy to be so talented. He had only lent him the energy for a while, and he could actually find the key to it and use it. He watched as the little boy began to cut melons and vegetables to deal with those guys. Lin Yuan just smiled faintly and looked at the Desert Wolf Demon King. "Now do you know why we humans are so strong? You beast." Beast. He was not wrong. In the eyes of humans, wolves were just beasts. It was just that this guy was now wearing the mantle of a god. He claimed to be the god of night here. And then he earned incense. Lin Yuan wanted to kill this guy directly, but at this moment, the Desert Wolf Demon King was actually trying to escape. He turned around directly, as if he did not want to have any more dealings with Lin Yuan, so he chose to escape. However, how could Lin Yuan let him escape like this? He opened his mouth and a 7-colored light directly wrapped around the Desert Wolf Demon King's body. "No matter who you are, aren't you afraid of the revenge of the Church of God? I am from the Church of God. If you annoy us, there is no way out." Chapter 1238. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. "I've never thought of having a way out, because in my opinion, trash like you are not worth it at all." He just said faintly. There was not a trace of hesitation in his tone. In the end, he directly reached out and grabbed the Desert Wolf Demon King's neck. "But you can stay and be my little brother's sparring partner." After saying this, he directly threw the Demon King to the little boy. "From today onwards, he will be your personal punching bag." The Desert Wolf King seemed to be unable to bear being a human punching bag at all. He wanted to struggle desperately. However, at this moment, Lin Yuan directly punched him in the face, causing him to involuntarily let out a series of wails. "I told you not to play tricks with me. Be your punching bag obediently, and I might let you go." However, just as he finished speaking, the Desert Wolf King turned his head to look in another direction. However, the guys who followed him, except for those who were dealt with by the little boy, had all run away. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. "Why didn't you all get rid of them?" The little boy scratched his head. "It's not that I can't, but that I can't catch up to them at all." After saying this, he was already squatting on the ground. The power that Lin Yuan had lent him had slowly been torn out of his body. Lin Yuan nodded slightly. However, at this moment, the people in the factory all ran out at this moment. They all looked at Lin Yuan and the little boy with horror. However, most of their gazes were filled with fear as they looked at the Desert Wolf Demon King lying on the ground. "Although I don't know who you are, please don't bring this disaster to us. You can bear the anger of these monsters, but we can't." Among these people, some had already begun to criticize Lin Yuan. He suddenly turned his head. Originally, he thought that by standing up for the people in the city, even if the people in the city were not grateful to him, they would not criticize him like now. No one would be willing to be ordered around and enslaved by others. But now he understood that these people were simply used to being ordered around by these so-called gods. He snorted and said, "Well, since you're so willing to believe in gods, I'll arrange a god for you now." After saying that, he turned around and left. However, the people in the city thought that he was a madman. No one would believe what he had just said. Only the little boy believed that all his thoughts were on Lin Yuan. He trusted him unconditionally. After all, he had personally experienced how terrifying the man in front of him was. Lin Yuan shook his head. "I still don't know your name," he asked the little boy in front of him. The little boy hesitated for a long time, but did not say his name. "I don't have a name. I only remember my parents calling me Bruiser before they died." When he said this, his body was constantly under pressure. He did not want to recall what had happened that day. Lin Yuan sighed softly and pointed at the little boy. From now on, I'll make you the god of this wasteland. But you have to be virtuous. Of course, he knew that if he casually arranged a god in this place, he was afraid that this matter would not be resolved so easily. Moreover, he could also feel that the matter at the summit was not over yet. Because he had already sensed that after the Monster King was captured, something else was coming here. Or it could be said that this was the god worship sect behind the King of Medicine. But what he did not expect was that the people who came were not from the god worship sect, but a group of people who looked very special. Although their clothes were also tattered, there seemed to be some special changes in this matter. No matter what kind of weapon they held in their hands, their body was even more murderous. When the little boy saw them, he could not help but feel a little excited. These are the heroes of our city. They are the only ones who dare to fight against those gods and monsters. Oh, Lin Yuan frowned slightly. He did not expect that at this moment, there would be such a reaction. And he did not expect that there would be such a group of unusual people in this place. At least compared to the people in the city, they could be considered the same kind. Seeing that these people were getting closer and closer, the little boy ran out excitedly. Uncle Moo, this big brother is like them. They don't believe in the gods here, and they don't believe in those monsters. Just now he personally destroyed the Monster King. It's that desert wolf. After the little boy finished his words, the so-called heroes sighed in despair. We were wondering why there was a problem with the vast ancient road. It turns out that the god of night has been killed by you. Huh. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He looked at the people in front of him and then asked, "What is the vast ancient road? What is the problem you are talking about?" The leader of the group stood out. He first pulled the little boy to his side, and then lowered his voice. The voice said, "There are many monster kings hidden in the blue dragon bone knife. If we are not careful, we will die inside. We just want to find a way to kill these people, but we didn't expect that we would suffer such a heavy loss this time." After he finished speaking, he did not speak again. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. What kind of place could it be that there were so many monster kings hiding? His thoughts began to move. However, he quickly calmed his mind down again, because he had already sensed the tremors in that direction. Lin Yuan raised his head slightly and narrowed his eyes. "Tai Dan, do you want to take a walk with me on this vast ancient road?" These words immediately caused these people to stop him. "No, you are going to die if you go like this. You won't have a chance to come back alive. The things inside are not something that a desert wolf monster king can compare to." Lin Yuan shook his head slightly, and then looked at the crowd. Then he said slowly, "So what? It's just some demonic beasts. It's just nice to find a companion for little Iron Egg." After saying this, Lin Yuan pulled little Tai Dan and left. He directly headed in the direction of the vast ancient road. According to these people, as long as they followed this road, they would reach the so-called vast ancient road. Chapter 1239. Lin Yuan's movements were neither fast nor slow. In just a short while he brought the little boy, who was Tai Dan, to the vast ancient path. However, at this moment, the place was already filled with demonic chi. There were even some special demonic beasts patrolling outside the vast ancient path. It was as if they were inspecting their own territory. Lin Yuan just shook his head gently. To him, these guys in front of him were not very powerful. There were too many demonic beasts here. The Desert Wolf Demon King from before must have something special to be able to stand out among these demonic beasts. Just as he was thinking, a series of gongs and drums suddenly sounded. Then demonic beasts were caught one after another. They were the synonym for violence and cruelty. Lin Yuan could even clearly see many human corpses hidden outside the vast ancient path. There were also many demonic beasts left here eating humans. Lin Yuan frowned. He didn't expect to see such a scene. Bruiser, who was beside him, just explained that these were the offerings sent by humans. They were for these demonic beasts. These were all sacrifices. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan's face turned cold. He did not expect there to be such existences in this place. Sure enough, the more backward a place was, the more these things would cause trouble. Usually we can't find any humans. Now that someone has taken the initiative to come to us, it's a good snack for us." The demonic beasts next to him began to talk nonsense. Lin Yuan ignored them. Instead, he pulled the little boy deeper into the vast ancient path. It was as if he could not cut these things. At this moment, a demonic beast finally jumped out. "How dare you, human? Is this a place where you can barge in?" Their voices became very clear and crisp. There was even a hint of threat in their voices. However, they did not rashly attack directly because they knew that the man in front of them must be quite capable if he dared to create the vast ancient path with a child. They had even heard that there were some extremely powerful cultivators in the human world. However, what they did not know was that the human in front of them could destroy them at any time. Not even a trace of them would be left. Lin Yuan gently turned his head. "Iron Egg, this place looks really filthy. Why don't you clean it up?" As soon as he finished speaking, the little boy immediately dashed towards the surroundings. He was as fast as lightning as he launched a series of attacks, eliminating all the demonic beasts in the surroundings. The blood had already flowed and covered the ground. The little boy didn't care about this. In fact, he didn't even feel guilty about killing these guys, because in his opinion, they were the main culprits who had harmed the human race. Lin Yuan nodded lightly. He had previously taught the little boy a special technique, the killing formula. It could let this little boy feel the realm in the midst of slaughter. Even this made him a step closer to becoming a god. Cultivating this kind of cultivation method, in addition to his various experiences, would definitely make him a killing god. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not hesitate and immediately let him take action. But this time, it was as though a hornet's nest had been poked open. One after another, demonic beasts began to emerge from the ancient path. Although they did not launch any attacks, they were eyeing them covetously from the side. Their appearance was already extremely terrifying. It was as though they were going to attack these guys. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan sighed. "I really didn't expect the things in this place to be so difficult to deal with. Moreover, there are so many of them." He suddenly turned his head to look at the little boy. "Bruiser, do you want to get rid of these guys? Or rather, do you see anyone among these guys that you like?" Since he was about to become a god, he needed to have more god positions under his command. Firstly, it was to strengthen his courage. Secondly, he needed to pay attention to some checks. Firstly, he had already agreed to let this little boy become his disciple. Seeing this scene, those who had hands felt offended. After all, it was unacceptable to be looked down upon by a human like this. Before they could do anything, someone immediately rushed over. It was the brave warriors who had been following them. They were not at ease with Lin Yuan and Bruiser coming to the ancient path alone. "Don't anger these guys. If that happens, we won't be able to escape." These brave warriors directly blocked in front of the two. Although they saw the corpses in front of them, they did not expect it to be done by Bruiser. They did not even know why this happened. It's just that they put the target of suspicion on Lin Yuan. "I think this young man must have some skills, but he is not necessarily very strong." Therefore, when they thought of this, they had already chased after them. They wanted to save the two of them. For them, it was very important to have an assistant who could fight against them. However, at this moment, Lin Yuan turned his head to look at them. "If you let them become your guards, it should be considered good. After all, they are quite strong." Of course, this strength was relatively speaking. At least in this desolate place, their strength could be considered passable. Lin Yuan had seen all kinds of people, so at this moment he did not hesitate at all. He directly said, "Are we willing to support Bruiser to become a god?" This sentence stunned everyone. They did not expect this young man in front of them to say such unfathomable words. In their opinion, this kid did not know how to write the word death. Otherwise, why would he have such an expression and action? However, at this moment, some special changes occurred in their mentality. So many humans actually sent themselves to our doorstep. It seems like we are in for a treat this time. The demonic beasts began to encircle these people, and at this moment, the faces of these brave warriors turned solemn. "Oh no, if we are surrounded by these monsters, we won't have a chance to escape." Just as they finished speaking, Suddenly, a huge monster walked over from not far away. It was the same type of monster. The huge ape's body was even surrounded by all kinds of lights. It seemed like it would not be easy to deal with. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. It was a monster king. He did not expect that there would be some people with some strength in this place. However, this was not enough to make him feel strange. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. This ancient path was indeed a little mysterious. Chapter 1240. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. The vast ancient path was indeed a bit mysterious. He had only just entered this place, but he had already encountered a Demon King realm Demon King. It was hard to say what they would encounter if they continued to move forward. Perhaps he could even unlock a few gods from here. Thinking of this, he prepared to take another step forward. However, the heroes behind him did not agree with him. Boy, I advise you to quickly retreat. In this place, you're lucky that you didn't die just now. Now you want to directly charge forward. Do you know that you're simply courting death? Lin Yuan did not pay attention to these guys. He lightly snorted. Then he glanced at Iron Egg and asked, "Are you satisfied with this guy?" He was naturally referring to the little boy Iron Egg's bodyguard. However, Iron Egg shook his head. "I want to rely on my own strength to convince my own bodyguard. This way, it's meaningless to me." Lin Yuan smiled slightly and nodded. "Boy, you have some ambition." Finally, he took Iron Egg's hand and continued forward. However, the heroes behind them clearly could not control their emotions. They shouted as they moved forward, "Don't go any further. If you really encounter any problems, I can't guarantee that we can save you." After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan gently waved his hand. "There's no need for that. Just wait for your god to arrive." These humans could naturally become bodyguards, but they were too weak. They could not even hold up the front. However, the Demon King in front of them coldly snorted. "What do you think this place is? It's as if you've stepped into an uninhabited place. If you continue to charge forward, I won't be polite." Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows and glanced at the Demon King. "I've never asked you to be polite." His words were instantly choked. The Demon King could not speak at all. Good. In that case, I'll show you what a Demon King's strength is." His body suddenly swelled up. At this moment, he seemed to have used the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Looking at this scene, Lin Yuan only shook his head indifferently. Even Bruiser couldn't stand it anymore. He said to the Archfiend, "I can't stand your tricks. Don't show it anymore. I don't like Archfiends like you." His words almost made the Medicine King's nose crooked from anger. Did this brat think that he wanted to show him his strength, so that he could be promoted to be his bodyguard? He was courting death. He was simply courting death. To think that this Fiend King dared to provoke him in such a manner when he was not as strong as the Fiend King. Various thoughts flashed through the minds of the brave warriors. They had already decided not to make any more moves. Furthermore, they did not want to help the two people behind the high ground who did not know what was going on. However, what they didn't expect was that, although the Demon King was huge, and had even extended his large hand to slap down, Lin Yuan had actually swatted it away as if he was swatting a fly. He raised his hand. A rainbow-colored light instantly appeared on his hand. At this moment, all the light gathered on his wrist. In the next second, Lin Yuan only covered the Demon King's body with this light. The lawful embodiment of heaven and earth could no longer be used. The Medicine King's strong body was originally like a mountain. At this moment, his body actually started to fall. Seeing this, Lin Yuan smiled gently. "If you are willing to kneel down and submit to me, I can give you a chance to live." He was not joking. To him, the life and death of a Demon King did not matter at all. Moreover, this guy was not even as good as the Desert Wolf Demon King from before. At least, he did not stand out among the Demon Kings. This meant that he was definitely not as good as the Desert Wolf Demon King. But after he said this, the Demon King, who was as strong as an ape, suddenly slapped his chest. A loud sound reverberated through the entire vast ancient path. "I have never been so aggrieved in my life. You want to attack me at this time? No way." He had already roared. At this moment, All the demon kings began to cover their ears involuntarily. They could not withstand this powerful roar. However, Lin Yuan did not move at all. Not only him, but even Tai Dan, who was beside him, did not react. So what if you are loud? Being loud does not mean you can defeat us. Tai Dan had already taken a step forward. At this moment, he seemed to be prepared to fight with the Demon King to see who was stronger. But at this moment, the two forces collided. They directly entered the Demon King's body from behind. His roar was some kind of signal. At this moment, he was directly controlling himself to send a message to his companions, allowing his companions to inject power into his body. As soon as this happened, Lin Yuan snorted. Seeing that you can't deal with me, you actually went to find help? As soon as Lin Yuan's voice fell, he had already reached out to grab the other party. This time, not only was the Demon King unable to do anything, but the powerful power that had just been injected into his body actually started to dissipate. Lin Yuan then gently shook his hand, and all the power was injected into Tai Dan's body. Seeing this, the Demon King was stunned. He had not expected that the power he had just received would become someone else's gift in the next moment. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Who on earth are you? Why is it so easy for it to become part of my power? He shouted in disbelief. Lin Yuan did not pay any attention to him. On the other hand, Tai Dan's face was flushed red. It seemed that he could not withstand this power at all. Seeing this, Lin Yuan frowned. Previously, he had injected the power into Tai Dan's body so that Tai Dan could receive it. That was why he had used his own methods to open up the veins in Tai Dan's body. However, he had not expected this. Tai Dan could not withstand the Demon King's power at all. At this moment, the other heroes also came up to him. You can't do this. This little guy's body is not fully developed at all. Moreover, he can't digest such a huge amount of power. This is harming him. Lin Yuan frowned. Can't digest it? Then I'll change my method. Chapter 1241. The special power in his hand began to condense slowly. In an instant, the seven-colored light began to drill into Little Iron Egg's body. Lin Yuan hadn't expected that Little Iron Egg's body would actually have such a rejection reaction. However, this didn't stop him from becoming a god. At this moment, he condensed the power he had extracted into a golden egg in Little Iron Egg's body. This way, he could slowly absorb the power here as his killing intent art improved. Little Iron Egg's expression finally eased a little. He was stunned for a moment before he asked, Master, what kind of power did you just inject into my body? Why is it so magical? It's more than twice as powerful as the Demon King's power. Upon hearing this, Lin Yuan just shook his head gently and smiled without saying anything. When your power increases in the future, and you become a god, you will know the key to this. After saying this, he continued to pull Little Iron Egg forward. However, they didn't walk far before the heroes could no longer keep up with their pace. The leader of the heroes looked at their backs and shook his head. It's a pity that they don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Otherwise, given their strength, it would be easy for them to achieve something. Boss, don't think so much. Their lives are not something we can control. After saying this, these people turned in another direction and began to slowly withdraw from the vast ancient path. In their opinion, these people's reckless actions had nothing to do with them. They could even foresee the future. However, they couldn't follow them inside now. After all, if something went wrong, it wouldn't be so easy to solve. At this moment, what they didn't know was that everything in the factory had already been destroyed. The statue of the Night Patrol god had been destroyed. This was simply an unpredictable thing for the people here. In their opinion, everything seemed to have become a foregone conclusion. Therefore, they weren't prepared to continue staying here. Rather than suffer the wrath of the Night Patrol god, they might as well start a new life somewhere else. They didn't want to be involved in this kind of thing anymore. However, when they saw the returning brave warriors, their eyes twitched violently. Did you guys recklessly go to the vast ancient path again? The city lord said directly. Upon hearing his words, the leader of the brave warriors stepped forward. That's right. However, There are already two people who don't know the difference between life and death on this vast ancient road. I think we should. Just as he finished speaking, he realized that the huge and towering statue of the god of night in the center of the city had collapsed. Not only that, the people in the city couldn't help but sigh. What's going on? Who destroyed this statue? They naturally knew that it was the desert wolf demon king, but he had always been protected by this statue. As long as the statue was in the desert, the wolf demon king could protect the people in the city and would not punish them for no reason. Their so-called resistance was only a resistance against the desert wolves. They did not dare to make any moves against the desert wolf demon king, because they were afraid that their anger would implicate the people in the city. But now, the statue had been destroyed. What else could have happened? 2 days ago, a young man came out of nowhere. He brought little iron egg with him and directly destroyed the statue of the god of night. When he finished speaking, there was a hint of light in the sky. Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts trembled slightly, because in everyone's opinion, because there was a headquarters here, there were no special creatures that would come here. But now they actually saw a desert eagle. This was good news for them. It also meant that their living environment had undergone a fundamental change. However, one of the heroes was slightly stunned. The young man that the people in the city are talking about, could it be the guy we just met on the vast ancient path? If it really is him, I'm afraid that there might be a turning point in this matter. If it weren't for the fact that they had no other choice, no one would want to leave their home. Leaving the place where they were born and raised for so many years, at this moment, everyone's thoughts began to move. They knew that this matter was out of the ordinary. However, they also understood that if they did not leave, they would attract the attention of the vast ancient path. At that time, they would incur the wrath of countless medicine kings. Of course, there was also the great archfiend king. Thinking of this, the hall master's expression became somewhat strange. Do you believe that this young man and little iron egg can really return from the vast ancient path alive? Moreover, they can bring back some good news. No one dared to speak, nor did they dare to answer. They could not say what kind of outcome this matter would ultimately lead to. If they could really come back, then it would be fine. But if they couldn't, then everything was equivalent to having no chance at all. On the other side, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Their path had been blocked by some black iron towers. Lin Yuan's expression was somewhat hesitant. What is this place? Because he could already sense that there was no way to deal with the demonic qi in the iron towers. It was as if they were suddenly cut off from the world. Lin Yuan frowned, but in the next second, little iron egg had already taken 2 steps forward. The black tower rose into the sky. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan shook his head gently. Master, this place seems a little strange. Why don't we go in and take a look? This place can't be entered as we wish, he said indifferently. He could tell that this place was a little strange. Moreover, he could sense that the aura that appeared at this moment should have a special kind of strange power. The inside of the black tower was like a breathing person. Normally, they would constantly breathe in and out, and then some power would seep out. When he sensed this, Lin Yuan slightly narrowed his eyes. At this moment, the door of the black tower finally opened. A majestic suction force directly sucked the two of them into the tower. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He did not expect that this place was the Black Tower. It was actually so strange that he was directly sucked in without even sensing it. However, in the next second, all his thoughts were focused. He could see the weight of the Black Tower, the various characters that appeared on the first floor. It was so strange. It even seemed a little ethereal. Chapter 1242. Little Iron Egg couldn't react at all. What was going on? He even felt that the Black Tower in front of him shouldn't be anything special. From his point of view, everything here seemed to have appeared in his dream. Seeing this, Lin Yuan's expression finally changed. He could see that these were some special summoning arrays. As long as you touched the array's portrait, something would come out. Little Iron Egg sighed faintly. Master, there seems to be something special hiding here. Do you want me to go check it out first? Lin Yuan nodded slightly. It could be seen that the things built in this black tower shouldn't be so simple. However, even if the things here were very tyrannical, so what? With his cultivation and strength, it shouldn't be so difficult to crush the things here. But at this moment, just as Lin Yuan's thought appeared, a flash of light appeared. Then, everything in the black tower appeared before their eyes. Those characters seemed to come alive at this moment. Seeing this, Lin Yuan shook his head slightly. It seems that there are some special demon kings in this place. Before Little Iron Egg could walk forward, Lin Yuan pulled him back. Then he sighed softly. This thing isn't something you can deal with. Wait for it to show itself. As soon as his voice fell, the red light began to gather. The characters overlapped and appeared in front of them to suppress the three-headed hound. This three-headed hound wasn't smaller than the Desert Wolf Demon King. In fact, it was even bigger. Moreover, there were some special black flames burning on its body. When Lin Yuan saw this, he was slightly stunned. Is this the three-headed hound of hell? His mind began to move. If this was really the case, this place was really interesting. He smiled and took a step forward. However, the three-headed hound of hell directly spat out a mouthful of flames. Roar! A roar came out of its mouth. Immediately after, the entire ground was set ablaze by the flames. Little Iron Egg directly used his strength to block the flames. Lin Yuan really seemed to turn a blind eye to the flame. He gently stepped on the flame and walked forward from the flame step by step. I thought it was something amazing. So it's just a gatekeeper dog. Lin Yuan's words instantly angered the three-headed hound of hell. The three dog heads spat out flames directly at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan didn't even try to dodge. He walked forward step by step. The flames could pass through his body. When Little Iron Egg saw this, he was stunned. He didn't expect his master to be so powerful. At this moment, Lin Yuan's hand touched one of the dog heads. He stroked it gently. Then he said, "How's that? Be obedient and follow me. Otherwise I'll smash your head." After he finished speaking, the three-headed hellhound opened its mouth and started sucking on his arm. Lin Yuan took a step back. You really don't know what's good for you. He did have the strength to smash the dog's head. But at this moment, he slowly took a step forward and reached out to grab the hellhound's neck. With such a scale, the scene was extremely disharmonious. It was like a person grabbing an elephant. Moreover, the elephant looked huge, but it couldn't move at all. Seeing this, Lin Yuan's expression changed because he could feel that the head of the three-headed hound was separated from its body. To be exact, it was a long neck. It was like a python, stabbing towards his body. He took a step back. Interesting. It seems that you don't just have the bloodline of the hellhound. After Lin Yuan finished his sentence, he kept moving in the field, and the three dog heads chased after him for a while and hit him fiercely. Lin Yuan's movements were swift. The dog heads were fast. Almost in an instant, they had already overlapped each other. At this moment, Lin Yuan suddenly stopped in his tracks. Although you guys seem to be more powerful, the only thing you guys lack is that you guys don't have any intelligence. His words made Little Iron Egg, who was beside him, blush with shame. Little Iron Egg didn't even know what intelligence was. At this moment, one could clearly see that the three dog heads were entangled together. There was no sign of them being able to break free. He even clapped his hands and cheered. As expected of Master, he can deal with such monsters with just a little trick. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. He knew that it would be easy to deal with these guys so easily. Moreover, he knew that this guy must have other powers that he hadn't used yet. As expected, right at this moment, the three dog heads suddenly began to spray flames all over the sky and earth. Then their bodies were covered with countless flames. Under the burning of the flames, their bodies began to grow bigger. Then they gradually split into three aggressive dogs. Lin Yuan could clearly see that the other party's fangs had stretched out, and there was a special smell coming from the mouths of the three dog heads. Lin Yuan chuckled. Then he turned around and rushed toward one of the dog heads. You still want to struggle? I told you if you anger me, I will blow your dog heads off. After saying that, he clenched his fist. Then with a bang he punched one of the dog heads. Although it didn't explode, it made the dog involuntarily take a few steps back. He didn't know what his opponent's bottom line was. Just this one punch was enough to make him lose his ability to fight. The other two dogs also involuntarily took a step back. Lin Yuan sneered. It's too late to be afraid now. Just as he said that, a burst of laughter came from the second level of the tower. I didn't expect to welcome someone of this level here. I apologize for not going out to welcome him. Then, a man dressed in white slowly walked down from the second level of the tower. His expression was calm. His white clothes were whiter than snow. He looked ethereal. He was like an immortal who walked out of a painting. Chapter 1243. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. As the saying went, one had to look at the owner before beating a dog. Under such circumstances, Lin Yuan naturally could not continue to smash the dog's head. He looked at the person in front of him and smiled. I didn't expect to see such a handsome person here. It's really rare. The white-clothed person did not say anything. Instead, he smiled and waved his hand, causing a table and chair to appear in front of him. Looking at the table and chair that appeared in front of him, Lin Yuan did not stand on ceremony and directly sat down. Meanwhile, Tai Dan stood behind him. The white-clothed person really had the aura of a celestial. With a wave of his hand, a steaming hot tea was placed in front of Lin Yuan. However, at this moment, Tai Dan whispered into his ear, "Master, he should be a celestial. His aura is extraordinary. He has always been the one guarding this tower." Lin Yuan softly acknowledged. Looking at the white-clothed person in front of him, he said calmly, "I didn't expect that there would be someone with such an extraordinary aura among you demons. However, my disciple has been deceived by your appearance. Why don't you reveal your true form and let me take a look?" The white-clothed person's expression was originally calm. However, after hearing what he said, his expression suddenly changed. He snorted coldly. "What do you mean by me treating you with respect?" Lin Yuan had a smile on his face. However, the corners of his eyes and the tips of his eyebrows were lowered. In the end, he directly said, "Of course, what I mean is, since you're treating me with respect, why did you trap us in this tower for no reason? Do you think that I can't tell that you're using such a method?" After Lin Yuan finished speaking, the white-clothed person's expression changed slightly. Naturally, he could tell. At this moment, his method had been seen through. His expression was somewhat unsightly. "I didn't think that my touch would fail to satisfy your eyes. However, so what? Do you know that this pagoda of mine is a treasure that is hard to come by? Almost none of those trapped here have been able to escape. Not to mention humans, even Yao Kings can do nothing about it. They can only obediently follow my orders." After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows. "Based on what you're saying, it seems that you were the one who sent out the demon kings in the city." When he spoke, he was no longer as indifferent as before. His voice had turned cold. Hearing this, the man in white laughed maniacally. "So what if it's my roommate? It's precisely because of this that I can guard this area. Otherwise, how do you think I can manage these demon kings here? If it weren't for my methods, the human cities would have been destroyed long ago." After he finished speaking, he picked up the teacup in his hand and took a sip. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan chuckled. "All right, since that's the case, I'll make it so that no other demon king can order me around." After he finished speaking, he slammed the table fiercely, causing the table to shatter into pieces. The man in white immediately retreated. Then, a string of bells appeared in his hand. He threw the bells out. The bell grew in size out of thin air, and directly covered Lin Yuan. When Bruiser saw this, he began to hit the bell like a madman. However, the man in white laughed loudly. "This demon-binding spirit isn't something you can break. No matter who it is, as long as they enter, they will turn into pus and blood in a short moment." Lin Yuan was trapped inside, but he could hear what the man outside was saying. He reached out his hand and gently knocked on the bell. A series of crisp sounds rang out. At this moment, he snorted coldly. "You're still lacking if you want to deal with me with such a thing." After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan took a step forward. He directly punched the bells at the side. In the blink of an eye, a crack appeared in the leader's heart. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan snorted. I didn't expect this thing to be so sturdy. However, after he finished speaking, he clenched his fist and punched the bells again. Then everything seemed to have gone wrong. At this moment, the man in white walked over step by step. Rays of light appeared in his hand and enveloped Lin Yuan. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan just smiled lightly, and then directly grabbed the hand of the man in white with one hand. Then he shook violently. Wan Yi's white robes immediately retreated at this moment, revealing the smooth fur on his body. Lin Yuan smiled. Little Iron Egg, look carefully. What exactly is this thing? After saying this, he clenched his hand. This person, who was originally dressed in white, directly fell to the ground. How was this a person? This was simply a snow-white tiger with a multicolored body. The guy cried bitterly on the ground, then stood up immediately. Oh, I'm going to eat you, you reckless human. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. It seems that smashing a dog's head isn't enough. Let's smash a tiger's head. After he finished speaking, he stretched out his fist again and smashed it hard on the tiger's head. At this moment, everything seemed to have stopped. Little Iron Egg, who was watching from the side, was in a daze. What's going on? How did he turn into a tiger? Lin Yuan smiled. This was a multicolored great demon king. However, its realm was much higher than the other demons. Otherwise, it would not be able to control those guys out of thin air. Seeing such a scene, Lin Yuan dragged this guy to the front of Little Iron Egg. Since you can control these drugs, you can be my disciple's guard. That's not bad. After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Little Iron Egg was stunned. He wanted to refuse at first, but he immediately sensed the tiger's special aura. He walked over quietly and opened the tiger's mouth. Master, I really like this tiger. It's just that his teeth look a little scary. Otherwise, I would have pulled his teeth out. After he finished speaking, the multicolored tiger, who originally wanted to refuse to give in, immediately retreated at this moment. Don't do this. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't have the strength of a demon king. After saying this, it turned back into its human form and knelt down in front of Little Iron Egg. Chapter 1244. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He hadn't expected the tiger to speak in such a manner. This was a dignified demon king. Since that was the case, he obediently laid down beside Little Iron Egg. Lin Yuan smiled and said, "There seems to be something else hidden in this pagoda." Just as he finished speaking, the obedient half-Mongolian turned into a kitten. There are monster kings here who are much stronger than me. If you really dare to go in, I'm afraid you will be doomed. The multicolored tiger clearly didn't want them to infiltrate further at this moment. Lin Yuan was a little surprised by its behavior. It seems like you don't want us to go in, Lin Yuan said calmly. Indeed, when he finished speaking, the ferocious tiger was indeed as obedient as a kitten as it lay on the ground. I really don't want to harm you. Since I've become one of your people, I naturally won't let you go into the fire pit under such circumstances. The people here are much stronger than me. It seemed to be explaining anxiously. Even Bruiser, who was standing at the side, believed him. Master, if that's the case, why don't we not go in first? After all, we have gained some benefits from this trip. However, just as he finished speaking, Lin Yuan shook his head. There must be a demon behind this abnormality. It seems like you still don't understand. After he finished speaking, he took a step forward. Then, with a light tap of his hand, the tiger disappeared into Iron Egg's body. At this moment, he no longer wanted to think about anything else. In his opinion, for such a barren city to have so many monsters, there must be something special here. When he thought of this, he took a step forward. This place was too strange. The fact that so many monsters were hiding here meant that this place was definitely not ordinary. Therefore, at this time, Lin Yuan decided to step in directly to see what was going on. However, before he could finish his sentence, Tai Dan hesitated for a long time. At that moment, the tiger hidden in his body seemed to have a problem. Tai Dan's body began to slowly become thicker. His forelimbs also became abnormally strong. He didn't look like he did before. Lin Yuan quietly looked at such a scene. He knew that there must be something unusual about the state that appeared at this time. However, he understood that this problem wasn't a bad thing. The tiger wanted to take over Iron Egg's body, so it was trying its best to fuse with Iron Egg's body. If Lin Yuan didn't do anything, Iron Egg's life would be in danger. Furthermore, this danger wouldn't be so simple. However, right at this moment, Iron Egg's eyes suddenly turned red from eating. "I'm going to kill you, you bastard. You destroyed my cultivation and destroyed my foundation." Although these words came out of Iron Egg's mouth, Lin Yuan knew that they weren't coming out of Iron Egg's mouth. Lin Yuan squinted as the seven-colored light in his hand revolved around his eyes. "So you think that you can deal with me by controlling his body?" Lin Yuan was as calm as ever. Seeing this change, Taigoner's expression suddenly froze. "Even if I can't deal with you, I'll still get what I want by killing this kid." After saying this, Iron Egg's body started to grow involuntarily, like a seedling that had been fattened up. Lin Yuan shook his head faintly. His original intention was to let this guy assist Bruiser and help him become a god. However, he didn't expect that at this moment, everything seemed to have gone wrong. This guy was actually rebelling. Lin Yuan flicked his finger gently. At this moment, a wave of seven-colored light shot out from his hand and directly entered Tai Tai's body. However, the muscles on his body started to grow involuntarily, as if they were being controlled by something. Then they slowly grew to the size of a small mountain. "I know that the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth won't be able to deal with you. However, don't think that I'm just like that useless wolf king who only knows how to use heaven and earth." As soon as he finished speaking, he came out of the cave. His head smashed viciously against Lin Yuan's body. "No matter who you are, you already have misgivings in your heart. Therefore you are simply no match for me. Give up. This is your destiny." Lin Yuan hadn't wanted to say anything at first. However, when he saw Iron Egg's attacks on his body, he couldn't help but say something. "Are you tickling me? Why aren't you doing anything?" Iron Egg's face fell when he heard this. He hadn't expected that his attacks would be so insignificant to Luo Yunyang. Luo Yunyang didn't even frown. "What kind of behavior is this? How can you be so valiant? Even my attacks can't break through your defense." At this moment, the tiger knew that even though it had borrowed the body of this mortal, its cultivation base was still there. His initial attacks had only been to probe the opponent. However, every move he used now was a killing move. He didn't hold back at all. Even so, he couldn't cause any harm to Luo Yunyang. Luo Yunyang had even started to yawn. "My disciple's body has been occupied by you. Yet you can only use this much power. It seems like you aren't qualified to be his guard." After saying this, he swung his hand fiercely, sending Iron Egg's body crashing against the wall. Lin Yuan didn't stop attacking. He knew that even if he attacked Iron Egg now, the damage would still land on Iron Egg's body. Ever since Iron Egg had started to rebel, Luo Yunyang had already made up his mind to kill him. After all, no one wanted to keep such a scourge by their side. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan's movements started to become more violent. Finally, at this moment, Lin Yuan grabbed Tai Danner's neck. "Seems like you are no longer of any use. Get out here." Chapter 1245. Lin Yuan's movements were clean and nimble, like moving clouds and flowing water. After he finished this action, the tiger that had been hiding in Tai Tai's body finally appeared again. Lin Yuan fiercely punched the other party's skull. Dong. There was a muffled sound, but there was no reaction. Bruiser finally recovered, but his movements were still a little stiff. He didn't seem to have noticed what had happened. He stared blankly at the tiger's corpse on the ground, lost in thought. "Master, what's going on?" Bruiser's bewilderment made Lin Yuan chuckle. "This guy wanted to control you to deal with me, so I killed him. As for your reincarnation, let's find another monster to replace you for now." His words were said very lightly, as if he was talking about casually changing into a new set of clothes. However, Bruiser didn't know what was going on with the alcohol. He only felt his body suddenly become clear, as if something had been removed from his body. Looking at the scene in front of him, he didn't hesitate too much. He just nodded gently and said, Then what should we do next? Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. Next, we'll take another step forward. We'll go to the next floor and see what's going on. After he finished speaking, he pulled the bewildered iron forward. He naturally knew that they would encounter more problems in this situation. Moreover, there seemed to be a huge monster hiding in the Black Tower. However, he didn't care about these things. To him, with his strength and the existence of the system, he had nothing to fear. At this moment, he was already thinking of ways to subdue some monster kings. He knew that in this place, in the territory of the god worship sect, it wasn't strange at all. Moreover, it was very likely that the god worship sect had set up some kind of trap. At this moment, they must have made up their mind to pave the way for this. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many monster kings gathered here. When he thought of this, he walked up to the next floor step by step. Bruiser, on the other hand, felt uneasy. This was because he didn't know what he was going to face next. He instinctively felt that something must have happened when he fell asleep, but he didn't know what it was. Just as he was pondering, he had been pulled directly to the next floor by Lin Yuan. On this floor, as soon as they came in, it was full of fog. There didn't seem to be anything else here, and he couldn't see anything else clearly. It was just shrouded in fog. Lin Yuan's expression was a little hesitant. Of course, he couldn't tell what these things were. However, he instinctively felt that there was something wrong with the things that appeared in front of him at this moment. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and looked at the fog in front of him. He instinctively felt that the mist seemed to be absorbing the power in his body, but he wasn't sure, or rather, he couldn't find out what was absorbing his power. Lin Yuan frowned. He didn't expect that there would be such a thing hidden here, and he couldn't find its whereabouts at all. Interesting. I didn't expect the Church of Gods to be so capable. I didn't expect to find such a monster here. After he finished speaking, he turned in another direction because he could clearly see that in the fog, there was a strong silhouette approaching them step by step. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. He didn't expect to see such a strong thing here, and it didn't look like a monster king. There wasn't even any fluctuation of monster chi on its body. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan smiled softly. He hadn't felt like this for a long time. He seemed to have met his long-awaited prey. Don't let me find you if you hide here. If I find you, it won't be as simple as being killed by me. After he finished speaking, he threw out a colorful light from his hand. At this moment, the huge figure had also revealed itself in the fog. It was a towering tree. However, there was already a human face on his tree trunk. When he saw this scene, Bruiser was clearly shocked. However, he immediately glanced at Lin Yuan, who was next to him, and calmed down. Master, what exactly is this thing? Tai Danner asked blankly. Lin Yuan nodded gently. This thing is a tree demon. However, its intelligence has been taken away by someone. Now all that's left is this body for someone to control. However, this is quite a big deal. They actually used 1,000-year-old Yao King's soul essence. After he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and gently patted it. A flame immediately appeared in his hand. Then he directly swallowed the tree demon. The flame burned. The sound of a pipa rang out. It was as if it wasn't a tree that was burning, but steel. Lin Yuan closed his eyes and looked at the scene in front of him. The burning flame just now didn't weaken the surrounding fog. In fact, the surrounding fog became thicker. He knew that this was definitely not an ordinary matter. There must be something controlling everything in the dark. However, he was now the target and prey. From now on, follow me closely. Don't leave me by even half an inch. If you leave my range, you might encounter something. If you can't protect your life, I won't care. Lin Yuan said softly. At this moment, Tai Dan didn't feel that his words were worth much. He clearly knew that if he wanted to stay by his master's side, he had to have the corresponding strength. What he had obtained was more than enough. At least compared to before, he had not only taken his revenge, but also had a cultivation base now. If nothing unexpected happened, his master would give him a special identity and turn these things into his guards. With such generous conditions, how could he possibly complain? Now he only hated that he wasn't strong enough to match his master's strength. However, even though he sighed, he still followed Lin Yuan's footsteps closely. He knew that in this special place, if he was careless, he might not have a chance to live. Chapter 1246. It was also at this moment that countless vines began to reach out from the surroundings and entangle them. The vines came so suddenly that they were caught off guard. Lin Yuan's figure moved slightly, and he dodged the other party's attack. The sudden attack in the fog didn't seem to make him flustered. It even made him feel a little amused. At this time, this guy actually wanted to use such a method to deal with him. This was simply a fool's dream. However, before he could react, he clearly saw that there were rays of light wrapped around his wrist. Wrapped in the rays of light were human heads. Lin Yuan frowned. He didn't expect that there would be such an existence in this place. It seemed that this guy was a scourge. When many people thought of this, his movements became even more violent. He began to tear the vines apart. His movements were extremely violent. It even made people feel that he had a grudge against these vines. However, what no one expected was that as he tore them apart, the vines actually divided into two. Two divided into four. It was as if they could reproduce endlessly. Seeing this change, Bruiser already had thoughts of retreating. After all, he was only a child. After seeing the means of so many monster kings, he didn't know if he could continue to persevere and walk with his master. At this moment, Lin Yuan suddenly moved. He directly opened his mouth and a majestic flame flew out from his mouth. At this moment, Bruiser was almost stunned. He didn't expect that his master would be able to use such a powerful attack at this moment. The temperature of the flame was so hot that he had no choice but to dodge. Even if he had the power given to him by his master, he still had to dodge the flame because he felt that if he didn't dodge, it was very likely that he would be directly swallowed by the flame. He died on the spot. Lin Yuan's mouth was like a flamethrower. He kept spewing flames around him. As the flames evaporated, the seemingly dense fog began to weaken. Lin Yuan had been using his eyes to observe the surroundings. He was looking for the instigator here. He was looking for the person who released these weapons. After all, the 1,000-year-old Jing Ku, who could control and seize the Monster King, wasn't someone who could be easily dealt with. When he thought of this, his mind began to move fiercely again. In his opinion, everything was already set in stone. At this moment, no matter what methods these guys used, they couldn't do anything to the other party. And he was also happy to play such a game. Since the other party wanted to fight as the hunter and the prey, he could only reluctantly choose this way of fighting. Now he wanted to force the other party to show himself. Everything would be easy if the other party showed himself. When he thought of this, the speed at which Lin Yuan spewed flames became a little faster. It didn't take long for a cyclone to form in the fog. The cyclone didn't stop. At this moment, everything began to change. Slowly, the mist began to burn. At this moment, Lin Yuan finally stopped the movement of his mouth. Naturally, he didn't just want to retreat. When he spewed flames, he seeped his power into the fog. He wanted to use this method to completely dissolve the other party's attack. Not only that, he also considered another situation, which was to force the other party to show himself. Since the other party wasn't willing to show himself, he had to force the other party to show himself. Only then could he find the other party's key. Sure enough, when the fog disappeared, Lin Yuan found that caves appeared one after another on the ground. In this cabin tower, the world seemed to be a separate space and a small world. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and looked at the caves on the ground. He knew that the instigator must be underground. He could even clearly see the smoke emitted from the caves. All the smoke came from here. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He snorted coldly and then casually pointed at Lin Yuan. A flame spewed out from his hand and directly fell into the cave. It felt like he was catching a cunning rabbit. Lin Yuan didn't hesitate. He wanted to find the other party at this critical moment. But what he didn't expect was that just as his movements changed a little, a bald head would suddenly pop out of nowhere. It was a rabbit without any hair on its head. Lin Yuan reached out to grab the rabbit's ears. But before his hand landed, the rabbit had already returned to the cave. At this moment, Little White, who was on his wrist, actually hissed and spat out apricots. "Do you want to deal with this guy?" Lin Yuan lowered his head and looked at the guy on his wrist. He didn't expect Little White to take the initiative at this moment. I immediately reached out my hand. Sure enough, Little White twisted its body and began to move into the cave. The moment it left Lin Yuan's arm, its body began to expand. With a bite, the snake's body was as thick as a bucket. It directly drilled into the cave. At this moment, Bruiser was dumbfounded. It was as if he didn't know what was going on. He pointed at the white snake and asked, "Master, is that a dragon in your hand?" But just as he finished his sentence, Lin Yuan shook his head. "It's just a random pet. There's no need to make a fuss." After he finished speaking, he turned his head around. He stood quietly at the entrance of the cave. He knew that since Little White wanted to take the initiative to deal with the rabbit, it meant that this fellow definitely had a way to solve the current problem. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and waited at the entrance of the cave. He knew that no matter what, the rabbit couldn't escape. But at this moment, a burst of smoke suddenly ignited in the cave. It was as if something had exploded, causing the entire underground cave to tremble. Then Whitey crawled out of the cave, its body completely black. However, it wasn't without results, because the child was holding the bald rabbit in his mouth. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.